multilateral industry. Different aspects and different stakeholders are involved. We provide leadership for the digital broadband area across the next decade. We basically look at aspects like the next generation development, sustainability aspects, architectural and technology aspects. Also, we have documents about investment strategies. For example, we have one document on investment strategies for Africa. We also have it for other areas. And we look at the AI for networks and networks for AI aspects. Just to let you know, we are somewhere in the range of 240 members. Around 40 members are from Africa. And I see in the sponsorship of this event quite a high number of corporations which are involved in that. They come together, talk about the different aspects, the different problems, the issues, but also the solutions going the way forward. To position the WBBA a little bit in the overall industry landscape, we do have the ITU as the policy body. There's a lot of policy discussion going on in ITU. Then we have the whole world of standardization, where I'm very much involved in, with a whole lot of different organizations, ITU, ETSI, the European Telecom Standards Institute, IETF defining IP, IEEE defining Ethernet and Wi-Fi. So all the standards are sort of coming together into one big picture. And then the World Broadband Association is looking at the industry development, trying to find industry and global consensus on what we need to do and where we go. So that's sort of the position of WBBA. As mentioned, Africa is quite heavily involved in that activity. We basically have an annual WBBA BDC. BDC stands for the Broadband Development Conference. That conference travels the world. The last one has been happened in South Africa, but there are other ones planned across different places in Africa, but we also go at every other region of the world. We have 3 board members from Africa. You see pictures of these persons here. As I already mentioned, there's the Broadband Investment Guidebook for Africa, which can be downloaded from the World Broadband Association webpage. And there's a program on certification, specifically on the Gigacity certification. Kenya Fiber Pre-Development received one of these certifications, and there are 5 operators in Africa which received certification about that. So also certifications are given out at different places at different times. So that was the World Broadband Association. Let me quickly look into connectivity. So this is sort of the most high-level global view I was able to get. So there are the more mobile, cellular-oriented connectivities. There is still growth going on. The level of growth is not that big as it used to be. You see in the picture there is somewhere in the 18% plus growth is expected. This comes from numbers are estimated by Omdia. You also see that the mix of technology, we are currently in the change from a more 4G mobile towards a 5G mobile area. On the fixed connection side, we have similar growth areas of the number of fixed connections. You see the yellow part is the fiber connections. You see fiber takes over more and more the broadband space. But where the biggest growth is, that's really on the number of devices for consumers, but also for enterprises. That's where all the mobile phones, but all types of sensors, Wi-Fi things, and so on. We did one study already some time ago. There was basically I think it was like US, in average, one household has 14 Wi-Fi devices, which needs to connect to the world. So that's sort of the main message at the moment. So we are shifting towards a gigabit and beyond world. And what are the drivers there? There are basically 3 large drivers. One is these connected things. As I said, if you have more devices, you have a much higher number of devices connecting. Basically, so the assumption is we have a doubling of the number of devices every 5 years. We have the AI-related traffic, which basically is expected to grow quite heavily. The numbers here are somewhere in the 500% space. I'm going to have another talk in the afternoon, digging a little bit more into detail on the AI traffic. So basically, the key is you have data centers running a lot of AI workloads, and you have this more centralized and intelligent world, which needs very good connectivity to get to that data centers. Then on the shift to the gigabit world shows on the other slide, you see the number of subscription speeds, and you see that the 1 gig and above connection speeds is growing. So we are going towards a gigabit world. Different regions, different countries are naturally at different levels, but that's sort of the very most global view I can give here. Does it go one more? Oh, back. Yes. Here I have a few examples to illustrate a little bit what's going on across the world. So the economies are driven by this gigabit area, including also gigacities. So the examples here are like, one is from Singapore, where basically Singapore invests before the demand is there. So Singapore believes that the investment into infrastructure is a good thing to do. I mean, if you look at it from a commercial perspective, it's always difficult to argue in a business case to do that. Singapore is one of the countries sort of believing in that investment to go up front. Saudi Arabia is very much towards even the 10 gigabit society. So we don't talk gigabit only in Saudi Arabia, we talk about 10 gigabit, including the new optical communication technologies ready for deployment. Then in Algeria, there's a commitment for a quality fixed internet. So they are getting rid of copper and do much more fiber to the home. Penetration now at 66%. So they basically look into that and have policies around getting that going. Africa, a few of the operators, which I guess you guys know much better than I do, is various of these companies are running gigabit and beyond type of services and networks. Now let me focus on one thing which I think is important to see. So cities are a very major place where people live. So on average, 57% globally of people live in cities. In some cases, even near to 90% of a country. So basically, the key thing is in cities, it's relatively easy to put fiber in place and put the fiber infrastructure in place. It's very expensive to do it in the rural areas, naturally, but in the cities, it's very easy to do. It's quick to connect, and you can easily connect the government, financial, and industrial, health, and education facilities, because they have a tendency that those are in cities as well. So the World Broadband Association has done a report on gigacities, defining what gigacities are, and defining a gigacity index. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. So we are just in the process of doing a gigacity index 2026. So the numbers I'm going to show in the next slide are from sort of last year, but it's the Gigacity Index 26. The publication of the report will happen very soon. Unfortunately, we were not able to finish that for this event, but will happen in the next few weeks. It's actually finished, and it's in the production phase. So the Gigacity Index is looking at 3 aspects. One is the pure network infrastructure, so that's sort of the fiber coverage, including GPON port proportion. Then there's the network connectivity, so that's sort of the service-oriented aspects. How much fiber to the home penetration there is, how much advanced Wi-Fi there is, how much the high-speed connectivity, like 500 meg and above there is, and how many gigaspeed connections there are. And the last thing is about the experience. Very important these days, you need to have a very good experience of the network and the connectivity. This is based on Ookla speed test data, where we measured in various cities what the experience is. And there is basically the medium download speed, medium upload speed, medium latency. For the 50 cities globally, and that's sort of what the slide shows here. I guess you're not able to see the small numbers, but there are several cities also from Africa listed here. If your city is not there, please contact us. We can check whether we are able to put that into a Gigacity Index in 27. Probably just to mention Algeria, specifically the city Algiers is here, has deployed 7 million fiber to the home over the last few years. That's why they increased the level in the ranking here. Nigeria is rapidly catching up. There you see the trend towards a very good way forward. Some of the other cities, including the city we are here, is a little bit behind, but I understand that this is where we are. The question is sort of more where we go. But it's the cities are sort of the first place where investments are relatively cheap and you get a very quick return on that in network capacity. I already mentioned a little bit the World Broadband Association has awards and certifications. So there's a Gigacity certification program. So if your city believes they have a very good fiber-oriented Gigacity deployments, please apply for that certification program. And there's a Broadband Excellence Award. This is a little bit more broad, like awards giving out for very good broadband installations. Again, if you feel there is a thing to go for that award, please apply and contact the World Broadband Association. So finally, a quick word on what do we do today. Basically, the AI topic is naturally keeping us busy as well, like everybody else here. What we are currently doing is we're trying to give numbers and try to figure out what is the actual impact of AI on the broadband network. What is, if you go AI, what is needed from the broadband network? Since the network is the foundation of the intelligent society, the network needs to know how do we need to deploy the network, how do we need to change the network. So there is naturally an increase of traffic, I showed that, and change of traffic patterns. You start having much more data center to data center traffic than we used to have. The very high value AI application need also premium network performance. If the AI application is something mission critical, then also the performance of the network needs to follow. And there are a variety of AI-enhanced and new AI application creating different traffic patterns, different traffic increases. The slide just shows a little bit the classification in the lower value and the higher value services and how complex or simple the tasks are. Let me quickly say something. This is also a report which will come out in June. The report is almost finished. We are in the last review phase. Unfortunately, I cannot give the link for that, but it's coming along. And then one more aspect is the AI long haul. As I said, we need to look at the network if we go AI. And we look into the data center to data center traffic. If you want to have reliability, you need multiple data centers anyway. With optical communication and optical long-haul communication, you get much more resiliencies into the networks. You also need for training the very modern large language model. They usually, one data center is high-end large language model AI applications. One data center is not enough anymore. So you need to have cross-data center connectivity. So that's sort of, if you go into that, optical communication for data center interconnection. You also need to start looking at the cross-country data center interconnect. You need this large capacity, which optical communication is able to do. You need low latency, so AI training is really relying on low latency and reliable packet transport. Maximum distance reach. If you're able to reach more distance, you can reduce the number of data centers. If there's collaborations between different countries, even better. There's automatic provisioning. We move from a more reactive to a predictive network management. And that particular document I'm referencing here, that's downloadable right away. There is a use case from MTN Nigeria in there, how they upgrade their optical network, the core network, to be ready for AI workloads. So to finish up, WBA tries to bridge the broadband development gap, driving the future broadband network, researching the demand for the new networks. The industry stakeholders are set out goals and consistent measurements. So we measure a lot of things, the fiber deployments, the gigacity index I showed you, the cloud deployment indexes, and so on. There's a lot of measurement going on to see where we are, which countries, which cities are where. And there's the focus on broadband investment and regulatory approaches. And in case you are interested to be also a member of the 40 African members already, feel free to contact us. Now, membership is a very good thing to do and talk with everybody else in the industry. With that, thank you very much. Go to the worldbroadbandassociation.com webpage, download the things you are interested in. There's a lot of material. You probably need to find your way a little bit. But with that, I'm done here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brunner. And I mean, we are uniting Africa's innovation for an inclusive digital market. I don't know if I was the only one. Once he brought the Gigacity Index, you quickly go looking for your city. You know, you can see your Shanghai, Dubai, but you're like, I don't want that. Where is my city? You know, that's where you're going. And I think when you look in the room, we see where we are. He said we are moving in the right direction. So the thing is to have more concerted efforts so that next time we're here, Connected 2027, yes, the numbers never lie. You know, they say men and women lie, numbers don't. And shall come back and actually see how far we've improved from the last index that we saw right here. I want us to move our conversation forward because we're really looking at how we can, as a continent, look inwards as far as digital connectivity is concerned and what we can do as we each play our part in moving this forward. We've seen how we can connect Africa better to sovereignty has been a key issue in terms of the dialogue across the spectrum, not only from what we're looking at an economic front, but also politically. These have been issues that have been discussed. Now we want to take it further and look at it from the digital front as well. How to build a sovereign digital economy on cable made in Africa. And to take us through that particular keynote, I'd like you to put your hands together for Muzamal Mehmood, General Manager, Nia Fiber. A round of applause for Muzamal, please. Oh, and for those who are probably joining us on day 3, what happens is you continue clapping until he gets to the podium. So let us continue. If he takes his time, we'll be clapping for a while. Welcome.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Good morning once again. This is Muzammil Mahmood, the General Manager, Nia Fiber Group Limited. We are the manufacturers of optical fiber cables in Kenya. So today, the topic which I was given to speak on it is how to build a sovereign digital economy through cables made in Africa. So actually, this topic is divided into 3 core elements. So first is the digital sovereignty. Number 2 is the digital economy. And number 3 is fiber infrastructure. So we'll go through all these topics one by one, and at the end, we'll get to know how we can build a sovereign digital data network. So first of all, we'll talk about the digital sovereignty. So digital sovereignty, what exactly it is? It is the control over the infrastructure. So when we talk about the infrastructure, we are talking about the cables, we are talking about the poles, we are talking about all the physical infrastructure or the medium through which the data is traveling. Then we talk about the technology, platforms, software, systems, anything which is related to the technology. Then we talk about the data, who is storing the data actually, who is the one processing all this data, and then last is the economic value. That's the most important point where we need to work on. Who is the owner of that data control? Who is taking the benefit from all this digital economy? So as Africa is one of the fastest growing digital economy in the world. It is, as per the reports of 2025, this economy is greater than $180 billion, which in 2030 is supposed to cross maybe 200 billion or maybe more than that. So we are progressing in telecommunication, fintech. Fintech is like the financial technology, M-Pesa-like applications or something like that. E-commerce, digital services. But without having the sovereignty, we cannot grow our industries digitally. So that's the most important point of having a digital sovereignty. Then what are the problems when we don't have the control over we don't have a control on our data. Our data from Africa is being hosted by some other countries, some other continents maybe. We don't have actual control on it. What happens, and our infrastructure also, like what I explained before, the cables, the other equipments and everything, that is also controlled by other countries. So we cannot have the control on our data, which belongs to the people of Africa. Then what is digital economy and what are the impacts of not having the sovereignty on your data and the digital economy? So digital economy is again telecommunication, fintech, e-commerce, clouds, all these things which are involved in the digital economy. And what are the impacts? That's the most important of not having the sovereign data. Value leakage. Our data is being controlled by someone and we are not getting the benefit from our data. At the end, when we don't have the technology, when we don't have the control, we spend high costs in maintaining those data centers, the control over the data. We have the limited local industry. We have limited jobs and we have limited skills when we don't have the control on all these aspects. So infrastructure dependency. Like I'm from Nia Fiber. We are manufacturing fiber optic cables in Kenya. So before Nia Fiber, the cables were imported. Most of the cables were imported from other continents to Africa. In 2026, global shortages have come. That has come because of the wars, because of the AI, because of the building a lot of data centers across the world, and the drones are using the fibers as well. So the fiber has gone short worldwide. Geopolitical risks, a lot of companies which were having their head offices in different continents, they used to bring their cables from different continents from their head offices. Today, they don't have cables. So those companies cannot do the maintenance even. Forget about the deployments, the new projects. That's the real value. That's the real market on-ground research. It's not something which we are just saying now. The lead times have crossed 12 weeks to 16 weeks. That is production, logistics, and clearance and getting the cables to the warehouse of the operator. That has gone to 16 weeks, and these are the real values. And sometimes, and actually most of the cases, it has crossed 20 weeks, and the people have not received. They're just waiting. Cables made in Africa, that's the progress so far. Nia Fiber has started local manufacturing of fiber optic cables in Kenya in 2023. Initially, it used to look like a dream, because a lot of people were also telling us that you can't do it. It's not possible to do something in Africa, but we did it. We have currently produced, till today, we have produced up to 80,000 kilometers plus cables, and that's the real data. Are really working with all your operators, not only in Kenya, in Africa. We are serving in 13 East African and Central African countries. These all cables meet the international standards, and all the major operators, Safaricom, Airtel, MTN, Liquid, anyone, you just name it, we are their suppliers, not only in Kenya, in the region. So that's the first step actually towards the sovereignty of your data, because the cables are actually giving you the platform, the infrastructure, how your data is communicated, how your data will transfer from one place to another. And when you talk about the 5G, 6G, the high-speed networks, artificial intelligence, everything is running on optical fibers. So when we talk about having the fiber cable factory in Kenya, we have a lot of advantages. We have the faster deployment. Since Nia Fiber is in Kenya, supporting its client, so no one has the shortage of the cables. At least for 2026, there will be no shortage in the region. That's the first advantage. If there was no Nia Fiber, there was not going to be any cable in the market as of today. It's a global crisis. Anyone can Google search. The prices of the cables have increased 650% in 2026 only. So it's a faster deployment, reduced lead time. When you talk about the lead time, as I explained to you, on books, the lead time is 12 to 16 weeks. But when we talk about the Nia Fiber, for Kenya, the lead time is 3 days. Compare 16 weeks with 3 days. And for the region, it is 7 days. I was listening to some of the people who have come from other countries. So for Uganda, I think it is just 4 or 5 days they supply the cables. We have lowered the cost. We have made sure that the cables are available locally. We have created jobs. More than 100 engineers are trained. When we started in 2022, there was nobody in the country who has the expertise of working on optical fiber cables, manufacturing machines. We increased the skills development, we have done the industrial growth, and we have maintained the supply chain. But if we talk about the reality, and we are talking about the sovereignty of the data, so the cable manufacturing, it's not the full sovereignty. It's just the infrastructure which we are doing as of today. But it's a foundation layer, and we can achieve this by slowly, gradually working on the other sectors like data centers, cloud systems, digital platforms. We can do and we can get this sovereignty when we work on it. And this sovereignty of local data centers, infrastructures, cloud infrastructure, and we can do some joint ventures in Africa, we can do some gradual ownerships, and we can transfer the data and we can have the control on our data. But it doesn't come. Actually, the sovereignty is not only the data, it's actually the people who are there, who needs to be there, who needs to be skilled. We need to train the engineers. We need to have the cybersecurity capabilities enhanced in Kenyans, in Africans, students, young people. We need to give them training about the data management, and the governments need to invest on this most important infrastructure and the data control. The policies also from the government sectors, needs to be enhanced. The governments need to support for the sovereignty of the data, for the skills of the people. We should be enhancing the regional collaboration, and we should be giving priorities to the local companies, to the local industries, to the local people of Africa, the residents of Africa, who have the controls on their data, who have the skills in future, and they are getting their jobs and skills by all this telecommunication. So, what will we achieve if we have the infrastructure, we have our controlled data, we have the sovereign digital economy? What are the advantages? So, first advantage is the security. Our data will be secured. No one will be able to tap or leak the data. That's also very important. The decision-making, elections, and many other things are controlled from the digital data. Economic growth. If we have the sovereignty, we'll have the local people working on it. We'll have the local economy growing. The forex, we will not have to pay the dollars outside. Then we'll have the better cost control. We'll be able to better negotiate about the cost impact. And the most important is the strategic independence of the region. That's the most important point which we need to have as an Africa continent. We need to have the strategic independence, so we don't rely on others. And the most importantly, as I'm going to end this note, I'm not talking about to finishing the connections with other countries or the continents. It's just about owning your own data and having the control on your own data. Thank you very much.
Impressive. Thank you very much. That's Mr. Nicholas Kalasha, CEO, Near Fiber. And from what I've gotten from that presentation, it means without sovereignty, which is control, Africa is growing digitally, but we are not industrializing digitally. And I loved storytelling, and I'd like to tell you maybe a brief story before we get to the next speaker, because from what I understand about these sessions, this happens to be a matrix. One thing is joining into another. So imagine a woman in the village who makes milk, and she produces the milk and sells it to a middleman. And then the middleman takes it to the market and sells it as different products, milk, cheese, and other milk products. So what happens? The middleman makes more money than the person who's producing the milk, who's the farmer, right? So I am thinking, this woman, if she started her own processing unit and she was supported enough, and she packages it, brands it, and sells it directly, then suddenly she can earn more, create jobs for her community, and control her own business. So that shift, that's exactly where Africa is, okay? We have all grown up being just consumers, and we've never even really thought about being producers. And now, to help us unpack this powerful shift, like what does it mean and what will it take? Join me in welcoming our next speaker, Barack Odero. He's the head of technology enterprise at Safaricom. And now he's going to talk about the analogy I've given, from data scarcity to data sovereignty, which we've just had the presentation about. So ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause, Mr. Barack. Karibu sana.
Thank you. I don't know how the brief was, but I would have loved to be called Barack as well, because if I meet President Obama, we could have had a conversation. But you know what? My name is Joe. I'm stepping in for Barack. Barack is unwell, by the way. I'm the head of digital transformation at Safaricom, so we have a strong bench. If someone is incapacitated for one reason or the other, we can pop in and we can have the conversation. And more so, the discussion that we are having today when it comes to connectivity, broadband, this is critical. In fact, for me, who drives digital transformation for the business, I look at digital infrastructure as a foundation. Broadband is the foundation. And we as Safaricom, you can see where we are helping our city. I think Jeff was saying that we need to rise on the Gigacity Index. But we as Safaricom, we are at the forefront. We are part of the WBBA, as Mark has already presented. And we are aware why the rails have to work. Because if we don't have the rails and the roads, then there's no point building supercars, because where will they pass? So devices are growing in numbers. We have millions of interconnected devices, and not just mobile phones or tablets or laptops. We are talking about, especially think of the Internet of Things. We actually say the Internet of everything, because we are seeing a lot of interconnected devices. You are wearing smart watches. Someone was saying, I think it's Marcus who was saying, that a home, a typical household in the US, for example, will have 14 devices. If I look at my own home, my own house, I would even take that a little bit higher. So I am punching higher than maybe my weight. Almost 20 devices connected, from fridges, washing machines. All these things are bandwidth hungry. And the more the reason why the speeds that we talk about, low latency networks will be critical, high speeds, and then, of course, security embedded in there because of aspect related to safety, but also the cost. And that's also something. Cost, I personally believe, that this is my personal conviction, that the cost of broadband connectivity should actually continue going down, and that will require government intervention, policy intervention, and the more so from a continental perspective. If you cross borders, it becomes even more complex. Imagine roaming on data. How many of you have ever roamed on data in an African country? It can be very, very prohibitive, right? Yeah, yesterday I was lucky to sit in the ministerial roundtable discussing about how we can open up and have a common data platform for Africa. And even the ministers themselves were decrying the fact that they have to fly to France for them to go to Algeria. So if in the aviation industry, that's the challenge we have, surely in the digital economy, we cannot play like that. We should leapfrog. We should leapfrog. So I'll be brief. My presentation is just a few slides. As I already alluded, data is today's trade highway. It's true, because today we are seeing the digital economy is the most practical economy to jump. For example, are we truly an industrial nation? If we miss the industrialization, and which I have seen the efforts that have gone in to make sure that we don't lose, because I don't think we can leapfrog fully. We still need to create a lot of jobs in the manufacturing space. But in the digital economy, we can jump straight to where the big guys are punching. We can catch up with China, we can catch up with the EU, European Union, catch up with the United States as the global south. And of course, broadband is essential. Whether you are a kinyozi guy, you know the barber around the corner, or a kiosk, a woman who is receiving a mama mboga. A mama mboga here is a street vendor of vegetables. That's what we usually say. If you are selling to someone some vegetables, you still want to receive the money, for example, using M-Pesa or any other mobile money capability. And to do that, then you need a device. For example, you need a feature phone or a smartphone. It doesn't have to be the most sophisticated or the most expensive. Remember, even a feature phone is a digital device. It's only that we can say traditional digital. But smartphones are new digital. So it drives competitiveness. So if it's business, small, medium, small office, home office, large enterprise, it doesn't matter. The way African businesses and individuals will compete is based on how well they are connected. And the more the reason why we are saying that without it, Africa truly cannot scale. Then there's always people say, you guys, you have a scarcity mentality. Have you guys heard that statement? You know, I'm Kenyan, so I know how we speak here. We should move from a scarcity mentality and move to abundance. Abundance means that you cannot give what you don't have. It is that simple. So even in the digital economy, you'll only be able to contribute what we can. We cannot just be tapping on large language models, for example, in the AI era, that are made in the West that are not context aware. I think someone in their reflections was saying what I was saying on Monday, that indeed, if, for example, we are using large language models developed in the West, traditional West as we know it, and then we are trying to detect disinformation in the context of how we communicate, that cannot be feasible, because how we communicate, like Sheng here, the Sheng of Eastlands is very different from the Sheng of Lavington. I don't know whether Lavington has Sheng, but that's the reality. Just crossing one highway in Nairobi, then the language keeps changing. So, and even some words in Sheng, they keep on changing, for example. Like, you guys know what is Anganya? I'm speaking to the who is who over here, right? You guys don't know what is Anganya. Anganya is a matatu. A matatu that is so pimped up. If you just go here to Mombasa Road, you'll see some Nganyas maybe going to Kitengela or what have you. But the word Nganya, for example, is not a truly standard word for a taxi. In South Africa, they say this is a taxi. Here we call it a Nganya. So AI would not be able to know that unless it's trained to know that. But in some places, or I say Mama 3, MAT, all those things mean the same thing. But a large language model, for example, created by Google, it would have to be educated. So we need to create, that is the sovereignty that we need to bring, to create LLMs or large language models or small language models. Sometimes we only talk about large ones. We can create small ones that address our context. They don't need necessarily to be humongous. So infrastructure is catching up. That's the reality. So today, if you roam, we as Safaricom in Ethiopia, for example, and the first time I went to Ethiopia was in 2013 or thereabout. And I can tell you, if I compare where Ethiopia is now as a digital, digital economy and where it was at the time, it's a quantum leap, so to speak. It was truly, truly bad. I couldn't even, forget even data roaming. I would only do mobile roaming and it couldn't work. So as Safaricom, we've taken our business there. It's growing rapidly. I think last time I checked, in terms of sites coverage, we are almost a half of what Kenya have. And remember, in Kenya, we have been here for 25 years. So you can see the rate of growth. So we've been in Ethiopia 3, 4, 5 years maximum, and you can see the rate of growth. So infrastructure needs to catch up. So this way, then we are able to interconnect Ethiopia and Kenya seamlessly. And then that becomes a major. Ethiopia has over 100 million people in population. Kenya is around almost getting to 60. So you can see the opportunities that you have. If I pay here, I need to pay in local currency and I pay a business in Ethiopia. And the same thing should be able to happen. Because as I think the previous speaker already said, we need to capture this value. We need to capture this value and we need to keep it in a sovereign way. But we won't be able to do that if we create situations where we are so isolated. We can be sovereign. I remember sovereignty, and I think this is the next point. Sovereignty does not mean isolation. Yeah, you can be sovereign, but you are very interconnected. I think we can borrow from other industries that have made a lot of progress. It's called cross-industry innovation. If you look at, say, the aviation industry, you guys have heard of Open Skies? Anyone? Yeah, the Open Skies initiative, very, very important, so that you try to make sure that people can travel seamlessly and at a reasonable cost, because cost can also be a major, major deterrent. If, for example, the taxes, overflight taxes between countries are so prohibitive, then you know what's going to happen, because the carrier will transfer they'll transfer the cost to the end consumer or the passenger who is traveling. So this is the point we are trying to make. We need to have their own sovereignties. Countries, I think nations and political boundaries will never cease. But what can cease, and what the internet, the digital helps, is to actually to even out those borders. So that if I'm looking at you as a Kenyan, if you go to South Africa, you can be able to be recognized using, say, a digital ID that is African-wide. So that would create the interoperability so that people can move with this and trade can happen. But then trust is at the heart of this. I've just talked about interoperability, but trust is also truly at the heart of this. Trust, I think personally, and this is something that worries me most, I've seen a lot of growth in the trust gap, what I call the trust gap. So citizens to their government, employees to their employers, civil servants, and whoever manages them. So we are seeing that in society, community leaders and the people. Remember the leader-follower exchange. There should always be that balance. And trust is very, very important, because if people don't trust something, even the broadband that we roll out, even if it will be of giga scale, they will feel as if we are exposing them. So privacy, ethical aspects, governance will still, and data protection will also be very important to enhance this. So broadband makes sovereignty quite viable. And this is also, it goes unspoken, truly. The more fragmented you are, the slower the growth. That's just the reality. We need to break these silos. Just like they were bringing some walls down in Germany at some point, we need to bring these silos down. You know what silos do? They are great and they look like great edifices, but one pillar in a silo does not know what the other one is actually holding, whether they are sharing the same grains. That's just the reality. So as the nations in Africa and as Africans, if truly we want to get that sovereignty in the digital era, we need to shrink the fragmentation. And I think there are policy interventions. That's why we are talking about a free African continental free trade area. I think that's a great initiative. Again, the ministers yesterday were saying that it's not just talking about, it's also the political will. And I think the political will is essential. And this is where the heads of state come in. And I'm looking forward to reading somewhere that the heads of state, either brought together by the AU or any other umbrella body, to bring them together to get the political will. Because all these things we are discussing here, we will be high on the technicalities because we are engineers and we are good at it. But at the end of the day, we know that there will be political will that will help to support this. So truly, regional connectivity will unlock value for the citizens, especially considering how young our population is. As Africa in general, I can actually generalize and say our median age in Africa is almost 20, because there is a lot of, majority of the youth, very young people in Africa. And these are digital natives. You know, some of us are digital immigrants. You are migrating to digital. But these people have been born in the era of digital. Most of these people, if you are 20 years old, you are born in 2026, in 2006. In 2007 is when Steve Jobs was launching the smartphone. So you can see, them, they don't know any other life. They only know clicking around. So this will be the reality, and we need to, if you're going to truly harness that young, the potential of that young population, then we truly need to keep them connected. Then lastly, the penultimate slide, I'm almost done. There are critical things that we have to do. We need to invest. At the end of the day, these things cost money. That's just the reality. So if we budget for education, we budget for health, we budget for defense, we budget for internal security, we must also budget for this. It will cost money. We as Safaricom, we spend almost, I'll say almost 60 billion Kenya shillings, almost $1 billion to just every year on capital expenditure and operating expenditure, to just make sure that you are connected. So we are talking about real numbers here, and all the states that are involved in Africa will need to be able to inject this capital, and then the policy and the regulatory will help. But then we need also to be cost conscious, because money is not unlimited. I wish it was. I was hearing that in the DRC, the minerals, or rather the rare metals that have not been mined are worth $25 trillion, and I was like, wow. That's crazy money. That money can drive all of us in Africa crazy. So we need to reduce costs, because getting this money is not that simple. Then build ecosystem. Unfortunately, the digital economy, you have to work like nature works. It's an ecosystem. It's an ecological balance. You cannot do it alone. You've just seen Marcus present here, emphasizing the same. You've seen the previous speaker from Nia Fiber talking about ecosystems. We buy this fiber from them because we can't do everything as ourselves. And then we work with government, the regulator. This is an ecosystem. You won't be able to ace it alone. So, but the regulators now, I'm seeing regulators becoming more facilitators, not cock blockers. You know, the way you said, you can't do that, you can't do that. Yeah, you need to be able to empower and facilitate innovation, not necessarily to say, but as they say, regulations always follow innovation. So we'll continue innovating, but we want to work with the regulator, because we also understand that the safety and security of the customers or the individuals or the citizens using these digital services will also be key. Then skills. This goes, without digital literacy, all these things that we are discussing here, really, they cannot make sense. You need to go from basic digital literacy to starting to speak about things like agentic AI. That's a huge gap. So we need to carry people along and not just expect that they will learn to the superlative, to the far end. You won't become a PhD in computer science student like me overnight, but you can start somewhere. Start knowing what is a spreadsheet when you are a child at the kindergarten, and then carry on that knowledge as you scale. So last but not least, connectivity will shape growth, and data is the new advantage, and I'm also lucky to keynote in another session later on about data and drilling down on it. And we as Africa, we don't want other regions which are much developed to define this for us. We want to define our digital economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe. If you know him in other circles, you probably know him as Joe as a service, because Joe appears everywhere he's needed, you know. And if you look at the team that you're speaking about, really rich team, Safaricom, I think you can only liken Safaricom to the great Manchester United. Any Manchester?
Wow.
Oh, there's an Arsenal fan here. I knew. For Man U fans, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You'll experience a lot of that this year. Stay strong. Thank you so much. A round of applause for Joe Tafadhali. And also, thank you so much for Safaricom for being our title sponsor as well for this year's Connected Africa Summit. A great discussion there. We're about to get into our plenary discussion right here, get into a panel session in just a bit.
Yes, definitely. And the question for the panel, first of all, Jeff, I just like the fact that we have to join the dots in all this. And the question is the last kilometer political? Why intra-African connectivity keeps failing at the border?
And it's interesting because Joe has actually pointed out, not only from a digital front, but he said, like when you're traveling, you want to get from Morocco to Nairobi, there's no direct flight. You'll find yourself in a European city and you're asking yourself, why am I experiencing winter? And my home, there's a lot of, as in it just doesn't make sense. And I think this is why when you also think about why the fiber isn't getting across, why the connectivity can't take you to the next country, is it a question of political will? I think that's really going to be the crux of the discussion we'll have in just a bit.
Yes, and we'd like to welcome our moderator without further ado. Ben Roberts, Strategic Advisor on Subsea Cable Economics for Connectivity from UNICEF. Welcome.
Round of applause for Roberts as he comes on stage, Tafadhali.
And as Robert is on stage, we'd also like to call upon our panelists.
Robert, we'll get them on stage as well.
Okay. Yes.
The microphone's on. Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to call the panelists on stage, and I haven't got everyone's name, I think, here. So Tim Kelly from the World Bank joining us on stage. Thank you. And there is Mercy, is it from Nia Fiber? And I wasn't ready for this, I'm forgetting. There is a gentleman from Chad, is he here yet? No, I think we're on the way. And we have also, Agnes from Vilcom. Morning. Okay, so I think we'll sit down. We are waiting for the gentleman from Chad, and I think maybe he's having some cross-border issues traveling here. It's a very long way away, but I hear he's joining us. So welcome everybody, this panel. The subject really we're talking around is this challenge of crossing borders, and why is it sometimes not happening? I think we should be a little bit more optimistic. A lot of cross-border connectivity has happened over the last 15 years. Kenya has established itself as a regional hub. There are other regional hubs in Africa, but Kenya is connected to most of the countries that it borders, and that has been done via a combination of private investment and public capital from the government, supported by development finance institutes, and also private investments such as the company I used to work for. So my name is Ben Roberts. I was announced as being from UNICEF, but I'm not speaking here as UNICEF, but I'm a consultant and associate partner at Salience Consulting. And so let's turn first of all then to the question of those borders we have not crossed. And I'll introduce our first speaker here. You probably know the company he works for, the World Bank, very, very well. But I first met Tim Kelly. I came to Kenya in 2014. He's been here longer than me. But the company I work for, we wanted to see if we could cross the border from Kenya into South Sudan. And somebody said, oh, you need to talk to this guy. He's working on this from the World Bank side. And I called him. This was around 2014. And we talked a lot about it. And over the years, we've talked about it as well. But still, there's no link between Kenya and South Sudan. There is a link to South Sudan. I did manage to do the first link from Uganda into South Sudan. But Tim, let's start on this story. What is stopping us? What is not happening when we are not crossing these borders?
As you say, it's a sad story, and both you and I have been involved in different ways and in different places. I remember being present at the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the government of South Sudan and the government of Kenya. It took place in January 2015 to see a fibre completed between Juba and would have been Eldoret. And it was originally part of a regional project of the World Bank. Unfortunately, January 2015 was exactly a month after the outbreak of civil war in South Sudan. So the project which we'd agreed and negotiated and financed effectively fell apart because with this country in civil war, South Sudan, we weren't able to make the appropriate arrangements for lending and proper oversight of the project. So the project went quiet for a while, but it has been revived. On the Kenya side of the border, I'm happy to say that through the same regional project, we were able to complete the fibre between Eldoret and Lokichogio. But on the South Sudan side of the border, we're now looking at a new project, a new regional project, East Africa Regional Digital Integration Programme, which will see the financing of the fibre between Juba and as close as you can get to the common border with Kenya. Now that border is obviously a disputed area. It wasn't a border created by God, it was a border created by men and women, and they're not very good at creating borders. Ben and I are both from the UK or Great Britain, and we have a very good border. It's called the sea, and it works well. It's not disputed terribly often. We tend to invent our own borders between England and Wales and Scotland, which is good for football matches and rugby matches, but not very good for peace and harmony. But between Kenya and South Sudan, like many borders in Africa, it is a disputed border. So the arrangement that we've come to is that each country will create a meet-me point on their side of the border in territory which is not disputed. And then between those two meet-me points would create a fibre ring so that the actual definition of the border doesn't become an issue. And that's reflected in the MOU that was signed originally in 2015 and then re-signed, I think, a couple of years ago. So now we have the funding on either side of the border, but the middle bit, the bit between the two meet-me points, is actually being funded by a Kenya national project, the Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Programme, and the contract for that is now signed. So we are getting closer, but there's still some way to go.
Thank you. So, I mean, back to the question, what is the challenge? It seems like money isn't the challenge. The money's been there all along. The bankers had the money on the table. But other challenges, war is a serious challenge when it comes to crossing borders. Specifically, if those wars are about disputed borders, it's an even bigger challenge. So this is sort of starting to unpack where we are. We are joined now by our friend from Chad. We've been talking around cross-border connections. First of all, just like to ask, I know you've been staying in Nairobi, but with this subject of cross-border connectivity, how did you get from Chad to Nairobi? What was your journey? How did you get here? Introduce yourself first.
Hello. Yeah, okay. Good morning. Thank you for the lead that just informed me about the panel. So I'm Adam Medela. I'm from Chad. Well, I'm very happy to be in Nairobi. But the thing is, if your question how I get here, it was a very, very long flight. From Chad, we travel to Abuja, which is in Nigeria. And from Abuja to Lome. And from Lome, from the extreme west, to going back to Kenya, which is almost 20 hours flight. instead of 2 or 3 hours if it was direct flight.
Wonderful. Well, I'm pleased to hear that you managed to stay in Africa. I was wondering if you'd tell us you went via Turkey or Paris. And I went to Morocco. I went to Marrakesh 2 weeks ago, and I went via Paris. The other option was to go via Turkey. But anyway, we're talking of the subject of borders and inhibitors to. And I was looking at Chad. I think it might be an interesting example because it's got a few borders with different countries, but some of the borders are in very rough desert, very, very difficult geographical borders. One of them is a small border to Nigeria, where you've got a language barrier between English and French speaking. And another one to the east, the border with Sudan, again, is a border which is well known for having a history of conflict, armed conflict. But first of all, tell us a bit about Chad. I know you're working in tech systems. Tell us about what is going on there, what you've been doing, and then as well how whatever has been working in innovation in Chad, how you challenges you feel exporting that, whether it be infrastructure or other things.
I have a company which is called Developing Capital Corporation, which is a fintech company, but I work closely with the in telecommunication sector. Chad, we are almost 20 million people. The connectivity is very, I won't say bad, but it could be better. Penetration rate of connectivity is less than 49%. But everyone has double SIM because we have 2 operators, which is one from India and other was from Morocco. So, and the last one is Sotel, which is the national company, but it is on less than 1% of the market share. The internet penetration rate is less than 10%. And we are facing other problems also. For example, the penetration rate of banking is less than 5%, and this is on all the Central Africa. It's not the past 10% of penetration rate of banking. So that gives you some opportunities in investments in telecommunication sectors. It gives you opportunities to invest in mobile. And I know Kenya is #1 with M-Pesa, and the idea is to get real Pan-African collaboration, because we are always talking about connecting Africa, but sadly, when we speak of Africa, we are always looking to either Western, which is Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, or we're talking about Kenya, Rwanda, or sometimes what is developed in South Africa. In the middle, Chad, Cameroon, Central Africa, Gabon, all these countries are very, very bad connected, either in infrastructure, telecommunication infrastructure, or in just for traveling, for example, to go to Algeria. I faced the same problem. I had to go back to Istanbul and to come back to Algeria. So I'm very glad that we are speaking to connecting Africa. So this is the occasion for us to put the real steps to connect all these countries. From the fiber perspectives, we have 3,000 kilometers, and all the internet connection from Chad is coming from Cameroon, unfortunately. So the idea is connecting Chad with the 3 Cs. So from Chad to Sudan, and Sudan coming back to the east, and another road, we work on it right now to connect Chad with Libya, connecting Chad with the project was called Dorsal Tri-Sahelien, from Chad to Niger, and from Niger to go up to Algeria, and another road to Nigeria. So the position of Chad in the Central Africa could make Chad very strategic as a hub in the Central Africa.
Thank you. I actually find this interesting because we have been evolving when it comes to cross-border connectivity. Kenya and South Africa have been leading in having very good, effective cross-border connectivity that is being used to their neighbors, and as a result have become regional hubs of connectivity. South Africa being the biggest, Kenya being probably second biggest after that, Nigeria emerging as a third biggest digital hub. So in Nigeria, you have a lot of telecommunications provider now, cloud, Microsoft, Amazon. So you're having a big hub of the content being in Nigeria. So from a point of view of a country that is having a border with Nigeria, me as a network builder, I would prioritize the route to Nigeria rather than prioritizing routes through deserts to get to Europe. You know, that is me as a network builder. So maybe, maybe to the question, maybe sometimes we are building routes for political reasons. There was a subsea cable that was built from Angola to Brazil because they speak Portuguese and no one's really using it. And maybe we're doing some things for political reasons rather than necessarily for practical reasons. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. Nigeria is a continent, as they have already a market of 200 million. So I guess they have almost 11 operators or something like this. We'd love to connect Chad with Nigeria. We'll work on it, but we're facing some security issue. Okay. If that's your question. Yeah. So the easiest way to go to Nigeria right now is going through Niger, yeah, and getting back to Nigeria, right, and avoiding the Lake Chad, yeah, which is some troubles.
Interesting.
This is answering your question.
No, that is interesting. Yeah. So Nigeria having various places in the north of Nigeria where there's insecurity. It's a very interesting point. I think the same challenges we've been discussing already. So let's come back to this theme of hubs of technology. I'm going to come to near fiber. It has been, we heard earlier, but from your colleague, but we've built a lot of fiber in Africa. At some stage, some countries have begun producing fiber or assembling fiber cable. Not all of the components of fiber cable are made in Africa, but the glass is made somewhere else. This is the thin fibers inside, but the cables are being assembled with raw materials, plastics, Teflon, and others. So South Africa being one of the first to start that. I think Egypt as well is manufacturing fiber. Nigeria has a very big manufacturing. And Near Fiber was the first in East Africa and Kenya. So congratulations on that. And so, we're hearing, we're talking about hubs of connectivity. We seem to be having manufacturing of fiber in the same countries that I'm talking about. So how easy is it then to be an exporter of your fiber to the rest of East Africa? What are the barriers and challenges you might have of exporting your product to our neighbors around the area in the rest of Africa?
Thank you, Ben. My name is Mercy Mlumba Said, and I'm speaking from a manufacturer's perspective. And, yes, as Mahmoud, my colleague, and Joe as a service alluded earlier, there's quite some challenges that we have. Let me begin, and just give me 2.5 minutes to just take us through what I think my summary is about. What we see as near fiber every day actually tells us there is not a cable problem in Africa. There's not a technology problem in Africa. Actually, there's not a demand problem in Africa. There is a coordination problem in Africa. Now, today it's even easier sometimes to connect, like we said earlier, Africa to Europe. You alluded that. Through a submarine cable, 1,000 kilometers long, than to connect two neighboring countries separated by one border. Now, that's not making really sense. And we have all these summits running around. And we want to say that Connected Africa now needs to now move to some serious to execute some of these ideas and proposals that we discussed. So the last kilometer is not technical. It's not an engineering problem. It's actually political. What am I saying? You can see I'm old-fashioned. I believe in notebooks. Now, what are the issues? These issues live in the delayed permits that we get, in the delayed, inconsistent regulations. When we're trying to get our cable moved to maybe Zambia, we've got to go through Tanzania, sometimes do 3 or 4 countries before we deliver cable in one of the countries. So, inconsistent regulations, overlapping licenses, customs bottlenecks. We have had cable sit at the border for 2 months. At the border, cable that was manufactured in 3 to 4 days for a project that needs to be alive to support something in country A or B in Africa. It's not making sense at all to do that. So it lives in the protection of our old monopolies. We want to hold on. We don't want to evolve. We want to hold on to what we knew. And there's what we now know, because things are moving. We're holding on. And this is to politicians, to governments. I wish they were here, most of them. Yeah, it lives in the planning. We plan nationally. We plan nationally while business is moving and we're moving regionally. So when we are planning as a country X in Africa, why don't we plan regionally? Why don't we align? What are these summits for when we have all these government decision makers, decision influencers here and the summits to align and have something called the Africa Connected Policy of Border? Nobody's clapping. All right. Now, from a manufacturer's perspective, we have seen projects move hundreds of kilometers inside, and I mentioned this earlier, then stop at the final kilometer at the border. Not the technicians, we're not failing. Not the cable is failing. It's not even the financing failing, like we said earlier. It's the systems failing. Which way and what can we do as the people that are here, the government decision makers and leaders that are at Connected Summit today, because today we are addressing today, how can we come together and come with something that aligns some of these decisions that will see border move? How do we grow Africa from Connected Africa? It's something that we really need to think about, as opposed to doing the summits and coming in and meeting and networking. Can we take that step as government, as OEMs, as politicians? Some borders delay medical, not only this space, medical supplies, machinery, and all that delays at the border. Yet, the economies are moving as we are stalling at the border. We get goods stuck, so opportunities get stuck. When connectivity is delayed at the border, the cost is getting higher. There's someone paying an extra cost for that delay, as time is currency. It actually means for all those countries involved, and ourselves, slower trade, slower payments. M-Pesa is here. Why don't we as a continent say, hey, how can we all tap into the M-Pesa that's going around? How can we leverage? As opposed to all trying to create our own that will take longer, how can we work truly as an Africa family? Question for us. So it delays everything. In today's world, slow is expensive. Those borders need to move quite quickly. We don't have that experience. We have it on a percentage of 30, 40%. The rest, we are struggling at the borders. We really are. Okay? So Africa needs, Africa needs to together arise from this summit, this particular 2026 summit, into speed, into unity of the systems. What can we sign? And who can be with World Bank and whoever else needs to be there as a policy team? What can we do to change this narrative in 2026? Or at least start changing this narrative. So what do we need to do? I have 4 little points. We need to treat cross-border as a strategic infrastructure. Today, Uganda, Kenya, power goes. Today, we roam, although expensively. What can we do to treat cross-border like fiber? I'm talking from a perspective of fiber, so hear me on the side. What do we do to have fiber role like ports, like power, like rail, the railway goes. How can we have that smooth thing at the border when we are taking on connectivity through fiber? Fiber is not a luxury anymore. It's an economic oxygen, guys. And we need to know that it's connecting us. It is helping us breathe as a continent. So we need to also create joint border approvals. You see, the Africa border system, merging what Congo does, what Kenya does, what Nigeria does, we can align and have something that's common for us at the borders. We must not all agree that my policies, my policies. We can align to joint border infrastructure and policies that will be able to move Africa upward. We're stalling, and this is a good platform for us to get stuck out of that stall. So, and to make it common, like I said, adapt open access models. So infrastructure is shared, capital is optimized, and duplication is reduced. Do you know how many duplication things we find at the just trying to carry 2 drums of fiber optic cable? It's nearly ridiculous. Lastly, Africa, let Africa back Africa. Joe as a service talked about trust. That's a big thing that we need to fix. We need to fix trust. We need to trust Africa can do it. We mentioned we have Egypt, we have Nigeria, we have Kenya. We have people that we need to trust and have our cable, trust it and do it and be able to work with it. Trust regional supply chains. We start doing things faster within Africa, within the umbrella of Africa. We have more resilience, we are cheaper in deployment, really. Trust local industry. We're going to get things, and there's nothing wrong with getting cable from the Middle East or from wherever else out of Africa. But it's the same cable you're going to get here, if not better. So the question here is the last kilometer political? Oh, yes, it is. Africa, we must arise to make this better. But policies is also where the solution, in politics, is where the solution lives. The same pen that delays the approvals is the same pen that can sign the process. Isn't it the same pen? It's the same pen. And in closure, friends and dear listeners, Africa does not need another decade of discussing potential. I say this to our chair, Madam, of ICTA. I'm saying this to the leadership that is here. We don't need to be discussing the potentials anymore. We need to move to execution. We need to now align. We need to have smoother handshakes between neighbors. When Africa connects faster with itself, Africa wins faster. Come on, guys. It is platforms like this, with many other African leaders, policy decision makers, or drivers, together will come up with joint border arrangements. Maybe we can call that arrangement Africa Connected, in view of connecting Africa and growing Africa. I really think, what is it called? I really think there's so much, we're done with potential. This call is for execution. Let's fix, and I wish the ministers were here to hear that we need them to go and discuss policy change. 2027, we're moving slower. We're flowing better at the borders, country to country. Thank you very much.
And thank you. I mean, we've for the call for action. I do think, though, that many of your customers, we mentioned, your colleague mentioned Airtel and Safaricom and Liquid and others, MTN. They already have been doing this cross-border connectivity for some time. So whilst we do need reforms, I think the action has started. I wouldn't say this is the beginning of the conversation. But what I'm hearing, the takeaway from me is that these delays that cause delays in projects are probably hurting her business, right? You know, if a project is delayed and the order and the fiber's been manufactured, it's sitting there, people are not paying for it. So this is affecting the whole value chain. Now that we have got value chains of manufacturing fiber, you know, it becomes more imperative that we do not delay the project. I'll come lastly to Agnes. I think they've given us another few minutes. I wanted to touch on with you, Agnes. Number one, this thing of the cross-border, the link Tim was talking about, which is going up from Eldoret towards the border of South Sudan. That particular area of Kenya is one of probably the least connected areas of the country. So you as you're working in providing broadband in Kenya, how does this sort of domestic connectivity, how should it be supporting these cross-border links, which are often going through some of these remote, very rural areas?
Thank you so much, Ben. I'm Agnes Limo, the CEO of Vilcom Networks. Vilcom actually stands for Village Communications. We put the blood to the infrastructure that is built, the cables that Mercy has talked about, from World Bank, the finances that they will put. So we actually bring the impact now of what has actually been laid down. Robert, for sure, as we build the corridors, we should not make them just pass-through zones for connecting the cross-border links. Because take the same example you've used, like connection to South Sudan. There are so many pass-through towns that are there, but they are still underserved. Take, for example, starting even from Kapenguria, you go to Lodwar, you go to Lokichogio. They are actually underserved. But what is happening, we already have a cable there. And that is why, as Vilcom Networks, actually, we've made it our point to be able to do that connectivity. We've actually connected Kitale, we've connected Lodwar, just to take advantage of the enabler that has been actually put across to make sure the people on that corridor have actually been served. I think the other point that we need to be very intentional about is the actual border towns that host these cross-border links. Take, for example, Busia, Namanga, Moyale, Lunga. I was actually at Lunga when we were launching the cable, and I was thirsting to just connect all the villages, all the towns on the road. And actually, I think I will appeal to ICTA and the government to avail, let's say, that link for private sector to be able to actually tap into it and use it to extend connectivity now to all the rural areas around that place, because it's already a big enabler. If we were to do it ourselves as private sector, it would be impossible, because we're looking at return on investment. There's a lot of capex injection on that. So the government is already doing a lot in terms of creating that enabler. I think it is now for us to be able to now just go in and extend, make it available so that we are able to extend and actually serve the communities around that place. You also have mentioned, when actually you look at these towns, I'll now take on the hat of TESPOC, the Technology Service Providers. I see my chairman there. When we talk about cross-border, it is one thing to create the cable, but it's another also to create the data exchange points, because we do not now want traffic, let's say, from Kampala to come all the way to Nairobi or Mombasa to be exchanged. And that is why at TESPOC we are also very keen in creating these exchange points. And I think we will take them as close as possible to the borders so that we're able to exchange the traffic closer to the people and actually avoid the cost of bringing it longer per kilometer all the way to, let's say, Nairobi or Mombasa. So that is one thing that needs to be done. So creating these regional hubs that will help us to actually exchange data closer to the source and not transport it quite far. Another aspect, and it becomes also a blocker, a barrier, an enabler, and also can be an accelerator, are county governments. I think it's been mentioned in terms of regulations, in terms of permits. We currently actually as ISP struggle on that bit in terms of counties. We have to plan, like take for example, Kenya, 47 counties. You have to plan and have designs, 47 of them, because you don't know which county, how each county is going to actually request. So the costs are not harmonized, and the regulations are not also harmonized, and that is support that we normally continue seeking from government to really come through now for ISP. So when you talk about now connecting Lodwar, as much as the fiber is there, will the county government within Lodwar enable me to actually now expand and go deeper into the peri-urban areas without exorbitantly charging the operators? So that is a big struggle that we are currently having. And with that enabler, it will actually be very possible to create a lot of inclusivity in the digital economy. So I'm sure the same, as I speak about Kenya, I'm sure the same thing happens across the border as well. Most of the borderlines, you will realize, are very underserved in terms of connectivity. So that needs to be a replica in all these countries. Come near the border and let's enable actually the community around that. Thank you.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, I think she's raised a very important point. There's a time I bought a container of personal effects from the United Kingdom. And I live in Nairobi, but my wife has a small shamba just near Karawa Pond. And I bought this container and I wanted to move my things, put them at the farm. But this farm is in Kajiado. And so having paid a lot of money to, for bringing it into the country and customs and whatever, I then had to pay another $150 to move my things into Kajiado County. So I sometimes wonder if we are one country when you have things like this. Although you're having this good support from Lodwar, you're a county that is wanting investment in ICT. I think this is very key. It's the success of devolution. But I think there's also still challenges of still having to get way leaves to go through other counties. You have to pass through Nakuru, through Eldoret. You have to pay these way leave charges to all of the other counties you need to cross to get to Lodwar. Yet we have other competitors coming into the market, coming from the sky, and you know who they are. But they have a global coverage of the whole of Africa, and they don't have to pay these way leave charges. So by charging ourselves way leaves to get through every single county, we're giving an advantage to foreign companies who are coming in, making it hard for Agnes to get there. Does that make sense, Agnes?
You're so right. And I think the narrative actually needs to change for our counties to see connectivity and technology as their biggest enabler and do not focus on charging it and preventing it from accelerating. Instead, they need to actually convert and see it as it is going to accelerate businesses within the county and let them now benefit from the businesses that will have been driven into those counties. Because once technology has been provided, there will be a lot of players who will want actually to be hosted in those counties and do business, and the county can benefit. So I think there has to be that mind shift from our counties to change, treat fiber, treat connectivity just the same way they treat water, the way they treat electricity. So they will be eager actually for electricity to be taken into the counties, but why not eager to actually have the fiber connectivity to go into the county? So fiber is actually an utility, and that is how it should be treated. So that mind shift has to change.
Wonderful. That, I think, is an excellent note to close on. I think we must see the benefit of the connectivity, not see the immediate taxation and other things. I think what Agnes has described there, I think it's all echoing together. What applies on a country level is applying on a county level. It is all the same thing. I want to thank my brilliant panelists for this discussion today, and let's go to Mercy's call to action. Let's get to action and get connecting and keep connecting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ben. A round of applause for the panel, please. Thank you so much. Of course, we'll be taking a photo right before you leave the stage, so you can be upstanding for that. Am I giving the correct instructions? They should stand. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Another round of applause for them. Thank you. So there's a bit of a change in terms of the plan as far as our program is concerned this particular morning. We're not going to have our conventional coffee break. It's going to be a rolling coffee break as we move into our respective breakout rooms. So after this particular panel discussion, which has now been concluded, we'll just head into our respective breakout rooms. We shall take you through the various breakout rooms and what's happening in those rooms, and we'll move into that particular space as well. Also, quick lay of the land, a lot has been happening this morning. Some of us haven't gotten a chance to go to the exhibition area. So, when you get some time, please go into the exhibition stands. Amazing interactions happening there. Let's deepen those engagements as we go into those respective booths on that particular side. But right now, let's find out what's happening in the various breakout rooms right after this.
Yes, and Jeff, you will agree with me. It is what is happening in the discussions and breakout rooms that actually unpacks all these discussions we're having. So all of us, we might want to be in the discussion rooms, and I'll just give you a run of show and what room is having what topic. So today in room 1, the topic is building the African data space, governance, standards, and interoperability, okay? So room 1 is on my left-hand side, which is your right-hand side. Is that right?
Indeed.
Jeff?
Absolutely.
So room 1 is on my left-hand side, which is on your right-hand side, which is where I am pointing. And the topic and the title is Building the African Data Space, Governance, Standards, and Interoperability. And then room 2, which is where we are standing right now, is having the topic Data as Infrastructure, Unlocking Value Across Sectors, which is right here, okay? So pick your title, what you're interested in. This is room 2 where I'm pointing. Room 3 is going to be on my right-hand side, which is on your left-hand side. And the topic is cross-border data flows versus digital sovereignty, finding the right balance. And finally, room 4 is the auditorium, which is in the amphitheater, which is on the second floor. And the topic is data sovereignty, rights in the age of digital economy. I believe all the rooms and all the titles are now clear. So please pick your room, follow the energy, and don't get lost, because every room is in the right room today. Is that okay? Are we all set for the rooms? Anybody needs me to repeat for the first breakout session? Yes, so that said, the first breakout session is about to start right now, which is 11:30. We will be doing it for 1 hour up to 12:30. Then after that, we will be breaking for lunch.
Absolutely. After lunch, we reconvene for afternoon breakout sessions. We just want to do this quickly because we won't have another convening like this until tomorrow. So after that, afternoon is all matters business and deals as far as our breakout rooms are concerned. That's the name of the game as far as our discussions are going to be. So in room 1, which is going to be your right, once again, we'll be looking at the AFCFTA, Digital Trade Protocol, Opportunities for Business. That's in room 1 in the afternoon. Where we are, room 2, Interoperability and Government Enterprise Architecture. That conversation happens here in the afternoon. Room 3, which is your left, the FinTech Reality, Digital Payments and Cross-Border Transactions. That happens in the afternoon in room 3. And upstairs, room 4, that's on second floor, From Project to Bankable Deals, Structuring PPP Models That Work. So for the afternoon sessions, those are the discussions happening right there. As you can hear, it's business, business, deals, deals, deals. There's a hand up right there. And also, just in case you missed where the rooms are happening, there's a QR code that we'll put up on screen. It has all those details where the rooms are, the conversations, and you can get that on the go as well.
Yes, definitely.
Not on, you need the QR code. It's not reflecting those details. Okay, we are getting that feedback in real time. And as we said, for the next 4 days, agility is the name of the game. So we shall update that and make sure our app also reflects those particular changes as well in the rooms that we have and the discussions that we have. We bring this to a close.
Yes, so meanwhile, maybe we can have the QR code up again. And let me just do the final run of show. We are doing the breakout sessions right now, 11:30 to 12:30. After that, we will be breaking for lunch from 12:30 to 2 p.m. And then after that, between 12:30 and 2 p.m., you can divide your timing, go for lunch, do networking. We will be doing press briefings as well. And please remember, there's a lot that is going on outside our doors. We have the exhibition center. And the innovation in that exhibition center is quite encouraging. So I encourage all of us to please visit the exhibition center as well. And then we will come back immediately after lunch, which is 2 p.m. to about 3 or 4 p.m. for the second breakout session. So I believe that's in order. We will be updating the program of events. So without further ado.
Absolutely. Let's go into our respective breakout rooms and engage deeper there as well. Asanteni sana.
Yes. So in Kenya, going means twende. So we are going twende. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it is time we get ready for room 2 and the discussions. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. Remember, we are talking about interoperability and government enterprise architecture. That's on the second breakout session. Africa is sitting on a gold mine of data, so why isn't it rich? Once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a morning. Oh, it's a morning. Quarter to the afternoon. Thank you for that correction. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've not been in this room before, we actually usually just do a consensus. It's either we say good morning with energy, or we ask our sound technician to put some music for us so that we can dance and get energy. So for those of us who are in favor of us dancing to get some energy, say aye. Nice. And for those of us who are in favor of we will say good morning properly and not dance right now, but later on, say nay. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. That's more like it. So I guess we'll dance later, okay? So we'd like to introduce this particular session. And once again, our topic is data as infrastructure. Is that right? Unlocking value across sectors. So that said, we'd like to start with the keynote address. Data is the asset, governance is the engine. Africa is still arguing about the exhaust. And I'd like to call upon Ambassador Professor Bitange Ndemo. Kenya's ambassador to Belgium and EU and Professor of Entrepreneurship, University of Nairobi. Is the professor here? On that note, Then allow me to call Joseph Kanywa, Head of Department, Digital Transformation, Safaricom PLC, to give a keynote address. Is Joseph here? Do we have a representative from Safaricom? Joe was here earlier. He's just walked out. Okay. So maybe we'll take 2 minutes to get our speakers back. We'll be right back. Hello, welcome everyone. Yes, karibu sana, Joe. We're about to get your keynote address. Thank you guys, I'm glad that you've taken coffee on the go. Remember that's an option, but meanwhile the breakout sessions are ongoing, so please kindly, let's settle down and take our seats. This is breakout room 2, and our topic today will be Africa is sitting on a gold mine of data, so why isn't it rich? That will be the topic that will be discussed by our panelists. What an interesting one. Let's settle down, let's take our seats. I'd also like to request those who are seated at the back, kindly, if you do not mind, I am requesting kindly occupy the seat on your front, so that we can have people walk in as they come.
I'll find the clicker. Guys, please get the clicker so for shifting the slides. I think the people who are in the previous session, you will see a lot of me today. So you will see the true service, the Joe as a service. But all these topics are relevant and they are interrelated. Please put up the slides. So we'll talk about data. Data, too much data, not, they say too much water, not a drop to drink. And that's also what happens with the data. We have, there's no shortage of data in the world, even at your level. Just look at the data that is in your smartphone or in your PC. But then the question always comes, do you convert that data to insight? Because we as human beings, we as institutions, we as government, to be very honest, the key thing that we do every other day is to make decisions and to try to find the truth. But the truth is usually hidden. No wonder researchers, for you to get a PhD, you have to find the truth. And it can take you years to find the truth. But the truth is always out there, but there are a lot of hidden layers, so you have to see finding the hidden in a haystack, finding a needle in a haystack. And that's the same with data. Data is growing. We talk about the 3 V's, volume, velocity, variety. Big data. Then what do? We need to convert this data from, because data is just raw facts, basic stuff, basic raw facts of what happened. But we need to convert that data to information, and then convert that information to knowledge. And from knowledge, we can move over to wisdom. So you can have a lot of data, but you are very unwise. So that's the tragedy. And we as a continent, whether you or as a small business, wherever you come from in the world, you need to know that data will be essential. But this topic of data as infrastructure, I'm seeing time and again, I've seen a lot of reframing of what infrastructure is. Because for me as a techie, when I learned about infrastructure, I was looking at the hardcore components, say servers, racks, compute infrastructure, the data center, the power units, and what. But we are seeing the definition of what, say, a citizen, a member of the public would call infrastructure. For example, roads and rails. We are seeing that being very important in the digital economy. So that analogy of infrastructure is key. Because when you start talking about data centers, when you start talking about compute infrastructure, we start realizing how critical it is. And nowadays, we talk about infrastructure as code. We are seeing infrastructure that is programmable. So, for example, you can spin a virtual machine on a cloud instance by just a simple clicks, and you get a machine that has all the components that a computer should have. So, this framing, I believe it came from the ICTA team. I can see the thinking has percolated. So, kudos to the ICTA team and its think tank who came up with this definition. But I want to surprise you. I know everyone says, if you listen today, everyone says, data is the new oil. I want to counter that, by the way. I'm not saying that the thinking behind that is wrong, but I want to counter that because oil is a great commodity and it has made some nations very rich. But I think we forget how important water is. Am I making sense? Water is life, guys. And you know what? Oil can get depleted. We have seen nations that have rode the oil boom, but at some point they have also hit a snag somewhere. And we know it's not an unlimited resource. So even if you have, like Venezuela with billions of barrels, if you continuously exhaust it, there is a point at which it can become exhausted. That's just the reality. And water is shared. That's the truth. We are interconnected. 70% of the earth is covered by water. At least we are seeing the evidence from the NASA crew and the photos that they were taking when they went to space the other day, or rather the lunar flyby. And data can be reused. This is also very important. Unlike oil, when I burn oil in my car, I have to go back to the gas station. So that difference is quite telling. And water is essential for life. So if you think of data from that perspective, it's very important. Data flows, that's why we're talking about the African movement of data. Can we move data across countries and across businesses to facilitate things like trade, for example? But also data gets polluted. On Monday, we are talking about misinformation. We know what cyber adversaries are doing. Data gets, there's bias, for example. You've seen algorithms that are biased. So this is also another reality. And then we have also the fact that you can purify data. We talk about data quality, and I will talk about it later on. Data can be purified just like we purify water. And access to it definitely makes an ecosystem to thrive. So this is the reality. Do you think this is sensible? Am I changing the way you think or the way you look at things? I hope so. But this thinking is essential. So I think we have rode that phrase for a very long time. But I think the creators of the phrase, what they meant to say is that the next level of economic growth will be driven by understanding the value of data and converting it, not just as a basic commodity, but something that is truly a resource that can drive the digital economy. But I work as a digital transformation expert. I head digital transformation at Safaricom. And I always caution my colleagues that we should not be complacent. There are 4 things that we must always run parallel and make sure that they are working hand in hand. Because if you focus on one and you forget the other 3, then you will find some imbalance. On one end, we spoke about data and we'll delve deeper on it. But the people, you must carry the people along. In any organization, in any nation, the most important asset that a nation has is its human capital. Yes, you can develop infrastructure and what, but the greatest asset that you have is your human capital. So you need to carry the people along. Digital literacy is not a good to have, especially in the 21st century that you are living. It's an essential aspect. Then the technology, which is rather obvious, and I usually say, and I've been involved in so many digital transformation projects across board, across countries. Technology always works. What doesn't work is especially the people and the process, because the process is so key. There is no entity, whether it's government or private enterprise, that doesn't run on business processes. Like there is something you are trying to accomplish. There is an entry point, there is input, there is processing, and then there is output in each and every context. Whether I am applying for a passport, or I am applying for a new line, for example, I want to register for M-Pesa, there is a process that is always followed. It doesn't really matter. So process is key, because if you don't know the process, then you don't know the beginning and you don't know the end. You don't know the outcome that you're driving at. So these this quartet, I'll call it a quartet, is essential. So I'll contradict myself and give an analogy to say that data is the fuel. If the data is the fuel, for example, take a vehicle, data is the fuel, then without the engine, the tech is the engine. Very, very, very important. You cannot drive a vehicle that doesn't have an engine, so to speak. And a driver, of course, drivers, we are seeing drivers getting automated. We are in the era, we are talking about autonomous driving. But the driver is still there, it's just that they are autonomous. That's just the reality. Meaning that there is an intelligent computer information system that is coordinating, can see just like a typical driver would do. And then the destination, which I've already explained. So without it, you will just be spilling fuel on the ground, meaning the vehicle cannot actually move. So this is the imperative. So in every context, even as we discuss digital transformation over here, we need to keep this quartet in mind, and then transformation in the middle. But with data comes a challenge, and I've seen this, and many of you have been involved in any project, any IT project, for example. You know that data quality is usually a major, major issue. And how does data quality, how does lack of data quality come in? Errors of original entry. For example, you enter a customer or a citizen's name wrong from day one, for example. If you propagate that data, and now we are talking about a continental-wide sharing of data, then you know you are propagating an error at scale. And correcting it is very difficult. And algorithms, for example, we know why AI, for example, algorithms hallucinate, because they are reading from the wrong data. So data quality is critical. Because at the end of the day, models, even if they learn by themselves, they are always functional. They are statistical engines. And if you feed them garbage, you know what you're going to get at the bottom of the funnel. Then getting data quality accurate is difficult. It's also difficult for us as a business, and potentially we are the most technologically savvy organization in the country, potentially. But it's still a challenge. It's still a challenge for me. I still have to deal with underlying issues that, as I said earlier, they have been propagated over time to cause serious percentages of the entire data set that cannot truly be able to represent, say, a client or a business or an entity. So we keep working on this, and this is compounded by the 3 V's that I was talking about: the volume, the sheer volume of the data, the variety. So when you say variety, we mean data is structured, some is unstructured, and some of the data is semi-structured, is somewhere in between. Then the velocity. The velocity is the pace at which data gets generated. So we are talking about big data here, data in petabytes, zettabytes, not just gigabytes and megabytes that we are used to. Then another key thing that I want to bring to this conference to say that the solution is not just more data. Governance now becomes very key. You can see today we have the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, for example. So you can see we have the Data Privacy Act. We have, I think there's a bill, it has not become law, about AI, right? At the Senate. Yes, I've seen these things. So the governance, the legal aspect will become very, very critical, because we know what adversaries can do, we know what people can capitalize and do, without referring too much the consent that's given to the subject of the data. So another point, and I made it earlier in the earlier presentation, is to say that when it comes to interoperability, it's not too much about the technicalities. It's about also the political will, because of the economic gains that we stand to get. So we should always choose open data, just like open skies again, and federated data. We are not saying that we are going to create one data center somewhere and we agree in Chad because it's the center of the world, and then create a DC there and put all Africa data there. That's not what we are saying. But we are saying data needs to be federated and integrated, so that if I want to learn about weather data in Kenya or in Nigeria, I can get to know about it from here. And I will trust the entity that curates that data and get it and use it to my advantage. For example, if I'm doing a credit appraisal for a farmer who wants a loan. Then
DPI, yesterday there was a discussion on the digital public infrastructure, very, very vital. So 3 key things: digital payments, secure digital ID, and data interchange, data interoperability. That's the 3rd pillar of the DPI. So starting from the bottom, we have to have data exchange standards and, of course, legal trust, like I've just said. But then we have sectoral data spaces. So different sectors present different challenges, but technology can help to harmonize all of them. And at the end of the day, if you think about it, the farmer who is farming is the one who will become a patient tomorrow. They will send their child to school. So education, health, agriculture, all these things are very much interlinked. And they will sell their commodities, their crops to the market. So you see the trade comes in handy. But the identity is around that particular farmer. So the farmer doesn't change, you don't change. What changes is the use cases, the things that you interact with depending on context. So we should be able to identify you once and then manage you around that particular identity and at a continental scale. If you're able to do that, I think we'll have made very, very critical progress to support our citizens. Then at the very top, if you're able to do these things, then we can talk innovation. And we can talk artificial intelligence. Innovation is about asking new questions so that we can find new answers to things that we have never thought about. And innovation doesn't have to be, we don't have to invent something so breathtaking. We can just improve a simple process of how a citizen, for example, can be able to apply for a passport with 3 clicks and get it. And for sure, the government is convinced that they are issuing to someone who is legitimate. If you can be able to do that, that is innovation. So you don't have to think about inventing the next rocket, for example. So we need to think, yes, it's innovation, yes, but we need to think of innovation as about those small little problems that bother us, that we usually do that bore us. Actually, if something bores you, you should always think, what can I do so that this thing becomes interesting? That is innovation. That's the point I'm trying to make over here. Then the call to action here is definitely there will be legal, regulatory, and policy interventions. This goes without saying. And we need, definitely as a continent, we'll need to have more harmonized data protection laws. So I know GDPR, when GDPR was launched in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulations in Europe, there was a trend that shifted south, each and every country trying to create its own. And it makes sense at the end of the day because you have to protect your citizens. But now we are saying, because we want to operate as one, let me say, many sovereignties, but not isolated. We want to operate a common market, for example. Then we need to harmonize some of these laws. Then supporting cross-border data transfer, as I gave the example and I said that we are not building one monolithic database for everything and deciding where the DC, the data center, is going to be. We are simply creating federated data sources that are interoperable. This is where the API economy comes in to help us, applications, programming, interfaces. Then the independent data protection authorities. So I believe each and every country worth its salt right now has its own ways in which it tries to protect its citizens, but I'm seeing a value for synergy. Then in between, this is where the tech comes in. Adopting open APIs, that goes without saying. Like in the health sector, they talk about this standard called FHIR, F-H-I-R, they pronounce it as FHIR, which means fast healthcare interoperability resources for health. So that if I travel to Chad, or I travel to Nigeria, or to Egypt, or to Algeria, or to South Africa, I can be treated because the healthcare provider there will be able to know my medical history. I think that's a dream. It looks like a pipe dream. I really hope I'll see it before I transition to the afterlife, or the next life, as they say. Then data interoperability, critical, and then sandboxes for secure data collaboration. So whether these sandboxes we are going to work, we can work with the big tech guys. I know we've seen hyperscalers who are building or rather setting up cloud regions here. We have seen operators like Safaricom who are providing cloud services right within our countries and in other jurisdictions. And I believe other operators like MTN, like Airtel, wherever they operate within the continent. Then the last thing, we should never forget the people. And I think this has been emphasized a lot. I heard PPPs, private-public partnerships. I think there's another P added, which is the people, because it's critical, and we need to continuously emphasize on that. So continental data literacy, very obvious, and including the civil service ensuring that is digitally literate. Then ethical data certification for AI developers. The AI developers is not just about coding, it's not just about writing those lines of code. It's also awareness from the point at which they open the integrated development environment. They need to know what ethics I've worked as a software engineer. My first job actually was working as a software engineer. And I wouldn't say that ethics was the first thing. Personally, I was just looking at, will this thing compile? How many bugs will I be able to decode? That is what first a developer thinks. But they should be able to know that there is more that just meets the code, that there are ethical, there are legal issues from day one. And this can be trained even at school. So this is the last slide. And the point that we are trying to make here is we should not just copy and paste, say, what other data markets are doing. We can learn from them. And yesterday in the high-level ministerial session, we heard from, I think, an ambassador from the European Union who was saying that Kenya has already taken a step to see how we can cross-share data between the two markets. And then the other ministers in their interventions, they were asking, so why do it with Kenya only? And then I don't want to tell you what the answer was. But the point there is that maybe at the AU level, the Africa Union level, there is a chance to actually bring all these programs together. So we need to chart our own path and to know that we need to use data for public good, very important. This is the aspect of beneficence, doing no harm and always doing good. And then we need to be governed by the public interest. At the end of the day, we should have our citizens' best interest at heart. Private innovation and owned by the people, very, very important. Then we need to ask, to cease asking whether data is the new oil or in the new water. And actually, Mercy was challenging us here, Mercy from Near Fiber, to say that we need to move from strategy to execution. Because I think that's where we usually drop the ball. Big on strategy, but very, very minimal on execution. So we need to build the pipes, the rules, and the skills. So what will the outcome, to me, the outcome will be, and I know the panelists will come weighing, is that if I am a small-scale holder, farmer in Mumias in Kenya, or I am a nurse somewhere in Nigeria, or I am a young coder somewhere in Durban, South Africa, I should be able to benefit from the same continental data infrastructure. If we can be able to help these people achieve this, then we'll say whatever we discussed here at Connected African Summit 2026 was truly worth it. Thank you very much.
Steve. How about a round of applause? That is Joe K. Kanywa, the head of Digital Safaricom PLC, giving the keynote address, data is the asset, governance is the engine. Africa is still arguing about the exhaust. I like the take home where he says digital transformation is not technology, it's a matrix of data, process, people, and discipline, which is law policy. So you miss one, you miss an entire system. Let's just relate it to a bicycle, the bicycle analogy, right? Without the pedals, can you cycle? So I think it's very simple. Thank you very much, Mr. Joe. It is indeed a pleasure to hear from you. And that joins into the panel discussion where we have just moved into. And the topic is Africa is sitting on a gold mine of data. So why isn't it rich? Allow me, without further ado, to introduce our moderator, Mr. Savio Wambugu, the Director, ICT Authority. Welcome. A round of applause as he's coming to the center stage. Mr. Savio will be having a discussion, an interesting one, with our panelists. And the first panelist is Samir Ibrahim, the CEO of Sun Culture. And the second one is Jenna Slotin, interim CEO. Please welcome, join me in welcoming Jenna. A round of applause as she's coming to take her seat. The third panelist is Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, Nyasha Mutsekwa. Did you want to introduce them? No, it's fine. Okay. And we also have Dr. Davis Kimanga, Director, Products and Operations, Apero Digital. Is there any other panelists I've not maybe mentioned and you're here as a panelist? Okay, so let's have the fourth panelist, Jessica Wangai. Welcome. Mr. Moderator, take it away.
Thank you very much. I guess you don't have enough data about this session, but anyway, my name is Savi Wambogo, and I have really been listening to the previous speaker, Joel, and I'm now more confused because when you are at our plenary, the panelists were saying that they don't believe that data is the new oil. There are other different valuable components apart from oil, and Joel also said that he settled on water. And I was seated there, for me I was settling by saying that probably data is the new air. So I don't know, before we leave here, where we shall be, what shall we be saying? So, but welcome my panelists. The panelists are experts in digital data transformation. They're all experts, and they're all making money through data. So if you leave here today without any clear vision on how to make data, that's your problem. It's not now the ecosystem. Allow me or rather to first give each and every panelist just 15 seconds to say what you do. 15 seconds. If you do more than 15 seconds, we'll skip you. We can start with Jenna.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Jenna Slotin. I'm the interim CEO of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, which takes about 15 seconds to say, so that's a problem. I've used up my time. But just to say that we are a global multi-stakeholder network with around 700 partners, and by multi-stakeholder, I mean governments, civil society, companies, international organizations, academic institutions coming together to leverage data and technology for sustainable development.
That's 16 seconds. So ladies second, Jessica Wangai.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Wangai. I'm the founder of Diastech Solution, which is a startup in the data space. Also the Data Leader Action Lab, which is a consortium that you can look up and see what we do. And when I'm not analyzing data or trying to understand what data is saying, I have a class that I lead at Kenya School of Government, and I'm seeing some of my students here. It's a digital transformation class. Thank you.
Thank you. Nyasha?
My name is Nyasha Mtekwa. I'm the CEO of Ajua.
Thank you. That's 5 seconds. Dr. Davis?
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Davis Kimanga. I work for Apero Digital as the Director of Product and Operations. Part of our scope and relevant to this session includes setting up cloud infrastructure, including sovereign clouds and data lakes. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Let me start by bringing in Jenna. And I know, Jenna, you work at the intersection of global policy, data governance, and development. Across the world, we are seeing an explosion in data generation from governments, private sector, and digital platforms. Yet in many cases, this data is not translating into improved outcomes for citizens. And you heard about Joel talking about the Wanjiko, or rather the normal citizens. From your experience, what differentiates countries that successfully turn data into development impact and those that struggle?
Thank you for that question. And so I think that there is one fundamental differentiator, and it leads to many other important factors. And that is that investing in data systems is actually a political decision. So the countries that are really getting it right across Africa, Latin America, Asia, and around the world are making a political decision in policy and investment to strengthen their national data systems as an underpinning for digital transformation and for leveraging AI. And without that political decision, what gaps do you get? What challenges then do you face? One is fragmentation, right? You've heard the word, we all know the word interoperability. basically that data lives in silos and doesn't speak to each other. A government that has a brilliant national ID system, but that system is not connected in with civil registration and other administrative data systems in health and elsewhere, is not going to be successful at delivering those health services to citizens. The second is the connection between producing the data and actually using it in decision making. So you can have, as you say, a proliferation of data. We are swimming in data, but if it's not connecting in to policymakers, to decision makers, then resources are not being allocated to where the need is greatest, and those impacts and outcomes for citizens will not be felt. And lastly is one about trust, right? So unless you make a political decision to strengthen that data system, to ensure that the data collected and produced is reliable, of high quality, and well-governed, and that you really are investing at a national scale, at a continental scale in the governance of that data, then the trust won't be there. People won't be willing to consent and to contribute and to see their data shared, and they won't trust in the digital systems that run on that data. And again, then, people will pull back from digital systems and will not engage, and the services and the outcomes won't be there for ordinary people.
So would you say that the biggest gap is governance, leadership, or infrastructure?
I think the biggest gap is governance, and defining governance with leadership included, because I think my point about making that political decision to invest in those national data systems is really a leadership choice. But the real binding constraint, and I think we heard it from the keynote speaker, is that institutional layer. So it's about setting up the kinds of frameworks that are needed to enable data to flow in a responsible and ethical way, right? What are the institutional frameworks, be they legal and regulatory for protecting privacy, confidentiality, et cetera? Is it about the mechanisms that allow data to be shared? So that's data sharing agreements and mechanisms for establishing that trust, interoperability, which gets to standards and how the data is managed. But again, like I said, that institutionalization, that institutional layer needs leadership because it doesn't develop on its own. Governance isn't built on its own. It demands a decision by people to make that choice. And often, data is the afterthought, right? It's considered a byproduct of digital systems rather than the foundation. And so digital solutions, be they AI or otherwise, that are built upon a weak underlying data system are really ultimately just built on sand.
Thank you, Jessica. Let's go to Jessica, who is on the far end. And I want it to be now more practical in regards to the amount of costs that countries are investing in the digital transformation. And Jessica, many organizations today are investing heavily in digital transformation, and yet the results are slower than expected. So my question is, from your experience, how does data move from being a passive asset to becoming active infrastructure within an organization?
Thank you so much for the question. I think, and this is from experience also, I think it goes back to asking a lot of whys in our different functions across the different organizations that we represent, even in this room. We find that a lot of people will rush to buy technology even before they understand what problem they're actually solving. So then it becomes a question of data. What is the data telling us? Are we actually listening to the data? And I'm realizing that I worked with an organization, avoiding to name the organization in this case, but they have a lot of data, first of all, but the organization could not be able to share data. And one of the reasons that they kept giving is we feel like it's our competitive advantage. So why are we actually sharing this data? So then it becomes a question of, yes, we are collecting data, but it's sleeping on spreadsheets and dashboards, but not doing anything beyond that. So for me, that is passive data. And then there is a big need to shift this data to become an active data, and that actually shapes decisions. So I feel like that is the part that we are really lagging at, and hence why I started by saying we need to start asking ourselves why are we collecting the data beyond just doing reports? What else can this data actually telling us? Are we listening to the data? Thank you.
So probably just what are the, you can tell us and give, because I can see a lot of companies and organizations here, what are the top 2 practical steps that they should take to make sure that they're reducing the amount of passive data?
Goes back to asking the question, let's not rush to collect the data first, because in all honesty, I don't think we have a problem with data. We just have a lot of our data issues are on quality, do we understand, and also heavily on the ownership part. I've had a lot of people referencing the Data Protection Act as the reason why they can't share the data, but then I keep asking myself, is it an interpretation problem? Because the more we keep having our data in silos and refusing to share it, we tend to not answer all the developmental problems that we have. Like, we can't use our data to solve our development issues. So yeah, map out our data, let it answer all the questions that we have, and yeah, have it as an infrastructure, not just as an asset that is sleeping in organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Nyasha. And I know, Nyasha, you eat, drink, make money through data. But you also had Joel talking about people have data, less are converting it into information, more less are converting it into wisdom. For me, I was looking for people who are also converting now that wisdom into money. So the question is, many businesses today are collecting data, what you do each and every day. And but very few are translating that into real business value. From your perspective, what separates organizations that successfully monetize data from those that simply accumulate it?
Thanks for that question. I think coming from Jenna's point around political will, in corporates, there also needs to be political will. There needs to be an owner. And what we find in our customers, when we engage, we're always looking for who the data champion is. And unfortunately, these days, the data champion is the person who has been given the Data Protection Act to take care of. And as soon as that happens, it becomes a challenge, because the person is looking at the data in the business from a regulatory perspective rather than from a value perspective. So is it oil, is it water? They don't even get there. It needs to be gated. So that's an issue that we find. But where we see success is literally, and I want to give an example where, so we collect voice of customer data for our customers. And we had a healthcare provider who has actually been in the news quite a bit of the last couple of months. And they had a data problem where what's happening outside in social media is very negative, but what's happening inside when they ask the patients that come into the organization is actually very positive. Then they ask the question, what do we do about it? So the first thing we talked to them about was, well, we need to figure out what revenue you can build off this positive sentiment. And one of the things that came out of the data was actually waiting times for them, right? Because the healthcare providers, we all know, when you get to a healthcare provider, you need to at least give yourself a full day to just see one person, right? And they said, well, we're not in charge of the waiting time because we have all these partners and there's a whole ecosystem, etc., etc. So we were able to then show some of this positive data to an insurance company to say, listen, some of your customers go to this healthcare company, healthcare provider, and if you did one thing, both you and both your customers, when they show up at this provider, they could get a better service. And what we saw was actual real revenue increase from that one change. And that is data being shared, right, from one organization to another, data being used as the decision-making tool. But more importantly, this is a political decision where data is CEO to CEO is having a conversation about data, not about, you know, whether the sky is blue or not, but actual data pieces.
And what would you say is the most common mistakes that business make, and mainly whether it's on data collection, analysis, or even making sense, so that the organizations and business here should not go back to the same kind of mistake?
Well, I think there's a key component that I'm going to speak from a business perspective, but also public sector needs to hear this, is we forget that the key piece of data that we all should be focused on and listening to and looking at is the voice of our customer or voice of the citizen, right? Listening to them and understanding what we have to serve them, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, that is the key, right? And if we don't have conversations about the customer or the citizen in our rooms, meeting rooms, boardrooms, we're missing the point. And I think that's where the challenge is.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Davis. And we have been talking about data collection and all these things. And we know that without the correct infrastructure, that will be all useless. And if we say that data is an infrastructure, then it must be supported by strong underlying systems. Africa current digital infrastructure systems ready to support the next wave of data-driven technologies. Are we ready?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I would actually say not yet. I think as Africa, we've made very good progress, and there's a number of things happening. Connectivity has improved. Digitization across board has improved. There is some limited adoption of cloud to some extent. That's an improvement, which is good. But in reality, majority of the systems that we have are still siloed. Most of these came from the previous donor investment within our countries that were majorly focusing on a particular initiative. And as a result of that, we still lack the end-to-end proper ecosystem, which gives us the full picture of what is happening. And I must also confess, I spent part of my earlier career life, actually doing exactly that. We built an EMR for a particular chronic disease that did a very good job. By the time we were done, more than 2,500 facilities in Kenya were using that particular EMR. Then COVID came. And when COVID came, we realized the same patients that we were taking care of were now dying from other diseases. Then we realized that we were siloed within an individual. So really moving beyond an individual and focusing on not just the disease, but the patient is very instrumental. So moving from the siloed approach to that proper ecosystem.
And what would you say is the biggest gap, the 001 gap that can be easily be achieved? I know, so that you don't, I know many people will say money, but I believe that there is other different 001 gaps.
Money is important. I wouldn't want to underscore the importance of resources. But I think, one, the political will and government ownership is core at the governance level. The issue about interoperability is equally important so that we are not having the siloed system I talked about, not communicating to each other, because if they are not talking to each other, that doesn't help. The third component, and I think it has also been mentioned by my fellow panelists, is that aspect of governance and trust, where we have data sharing frameworks in place. That is, it's not just ours, it's not just mine, it's supposed to be ours in the long run to get us to where we need to be. Those to me are just the initial major investments that we need to focus on.
Thank you. And contributing to what Dr. Davis has said, there's a big issue in regards to data sharing trust. And I know, Jessica, you are very passionate about sustainable development data. And one of the key challenges we hear often is around trust, especially when it comes to data sharing across institutions and mainly, and also borders, intra-country, inter-country kind of sharing. In practical terms, what does trusted and functional data ecosystem looks like?
Thank you. I would say that there is not a sort of single architecture model for that functioning data ecosystem. There's a lot of great research and work that's been done, and excellent work ongoing in many countries to evolve a system that works in that place. But I think it's really a set of conditions. I'll name a few, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will have some great insights on that as well. The first, which we've already touched on, is those legal frameworks that protect privacy and confidentiality. We've referenced already the Data Protection Act in Kenya, of course, and many others in other countries. And I think it's important to see those legal frameworks not as a constraint on innovation. I think you were touching on just now, it becomes about gatekeeping sometimes, but rather those are the foundations that make the sharing possible, because then everybody has a good understanding of the rules of the road, right? I think, Jessica, you mentioned a fear of sharing or an unwillingness to share because of trade secrets. But there are mechanisms, technical and regulatory, to protect those and still share data and get value from it. By the way, in terms of the data as oil or data as water, I would say one thing that water is not, but data is that data becomes more valuable as you use it. And that is a really unique feature of data, which is why data sharing is so important, because as it is shared and reshared, it becomes more valuable for insights. But two other quick conditions that I'll mention. One is data stewardship capacity. And that's within public sector, but also within private sector. So it's not just about, the person whose job is to ensure compliance with legal frameworks, but the people whose job it is to understand the value of data and what data can be, or what value can really be leveraged in the revenue example you just gave, and see that value from an economic perspective, but see and understand how to manage data, understand the technical aspects of it to ensure that privacy and confidentiality are protected. And that is a profession that's not well developed yet anywhere in the world. And it's a profession that I think requires considerable investment in terms of data stewardship. It's not just about the technical capacity to analyze the data. And the third condition is space for experimentation. Our keynote speaker mentioned sandboxes. And sandboxes are a concept from tech, right, where technical solutions have a little space for experimentation, but we're seeing a lot of evolution in regulatory sandboxes as well. So there are spaces to experiment on different mechanisms for data sharing with oversight, so that the approach is to experiment, learn, and formalize rather than formalizing the rules up front, but setting some guardrails, experimenting on data sharing, seeing what works, fixing what doesn't work with oversight, good human oversight, not machines, and then beginning to formalize later.
Thank you. And Jessica, as you listen, there's a big gap in regards to, or rather, let me set it as a question, in regards to the organizational data sharing culture. Is the biggest challenge technology, leadership, or organization culture? Because in Africa, we have a lot of cultures. So is it a hindrance or what is it?
I think all three. Honestly, I don't think we should be separating them, but maybe to mention they're not equal. and they're not independent. We can't really put them away from each other because for me, I find culture as the foundation first. There's a lot of mind shifts that needs to happen in our different organizations, especially if you're working in the tech space. You know, there are things that used to happen before tech, and then there's the way that some of the systems that you're currently using before tech, and right now when there is tech, there are people who are scared of tech, especially AI taking their jobs and things within that conversation. It's really hard to really trust the tech. So also there's that the culture has to shift. The leadership as well. We have our leaders who still don't understand tech. We visited a certain area in one of the projects that we're working on, and we asked them what is AI, and it was shocking to hear someone say that AI is artificial insemination. Not that it's not, but you know, everyone has a way that they look at things, and for them, because they are farmers, that is what it is for them. And even right now, when we keep hearing about AI, it doesn't. We need to stop assuming that everyone understands what AI is. You know, so even our leaders, we have leaders who do not understand what AI is. It might be a skills gap, but we need to close up that gap so that then we are able to sort of fix the three, and then finally the technology becomes now the enabler and the fixer between the two. So. Hence why I was saying that they are not equal. We can't rush and say that technology is the problem if we don't fix our cultures and the leadership.
And over to you, Nyasha, and let's move to revenue streams. And I know that most of the organizations have a lot of data, but less are using the data intentionally and mainly to unlock additional revenue streams. So probably, would you give us a working example that you can tell the people that is working and that can help improve revenue?
Well, I think there's many examples out there around how to make your data a revenue stream. But I think maybe it's because it's patient week, patient customer week this week. So my example is going to come from the healthcare side again, but this goes to banking and even to government. We spend a lot of time as citizens, as customers, in banking halls, in the hospitals, in government halls, waiting for service, waiting for something to happen. We've partnered with organizations to allow us to provide the Wi-Fi infrastructure for that center so that we can survey those people who are waiting. So your customers are now accessing the Wi-Fi and accessing free Wi-Fi because they sit between 20 and 30 minutes in your banking hall. And we are able to service them by giving them internet, but also then we're using that data that we can then sell to other organizations. And that's a really live example of how we can collaborate amongst organizations, because one organization might say, well, those are my customers, that's my data. But this is actually data that could be used across different organizations.
Thank you. Dr. Davis, over to infrastructure again. And looking ahead, data is growing each and every day. If today the amount of data that has been generated here can be shared, it's enormous and it's big. As Africa, which priorities, where would you recommend that the organizations and governments should prioritize? Which part of the infrastructure, which part of technology, what would you recommend them to start with?
I think I'll still thank you for that. I would actually still go back to the environment that then allows you to allow systems to talk to each other. So great focus on interoperability as a core aspect of what governments need to invest in. But not just that, interoperability only comes into play when we have the digital public infrastructure. Again, I shared my example earlier on where I talked about building an EMR. And one of the challenges that we faced is that when clients moved from one facility to another, we didn't have a way of uniquely identifying them. So the lack of digital identity across the EMRs was core. The second aspect is really all the registries that are required to get us home. So creating that enabling environment where, from an infrastructure perspective, you are able to foster an environment where data is exchanged across platform, you are bringing it together, it becomes real time, it becomes a proper ecosystem, and you are able to generate insights out of that data in a way that will then inform public, actually action, but most importantly from the health sector, public health action.
And as we close, 1 minute each, what is that one action for the next 2 to 3 years that organizations and countries and development partners should invest in to make sure they can unlock data value within the next 2 to 3 years? What is that priority one? Let me still start with you then, because that's where you started. You are closing with the same question. Dr. Davis.
Back to DPI. Let's put resources on DPI. Let's make data a public good.
Are you for the opinion of subdividing it into 2 because of the digital data privacy? Do we hide the most important details? Do we share some of the details for people, things like age, gender?
Depends on the purpose. Now, from the health sector, if I'm moving you from one facility to another, I probably need to share all details about you for continuity of care. And I think we need to get to that point where we accept that. If it's really above facility and it's not for patient care, it's for population statistics, then really you need to stripe off all identifiers and then make good use of the data that you have. So it's not bad to share data, whatever type of data. I think what's important is what governance framework are you using, and are you well protected, and what is the intended purpose?
Nyasha?
I think coming from that is actually just back to the customer or the citizen perspective, right? Is if I ask myself what kind of data should be out there about me, I go back to what Dr. Davis has actually said. I don't mind that my healthcare data is freely accessible to all doctors because I might just fall over here and there's a doctor in the room and they can access it and they can help me. But I don't need all the insurance companies to know who I am. They want to sell me some insurance policy, right? So there's levels to it, and I think that what we are doing right now is putting guardrails, as Jen has talked about, on everything, rather than actually figuring out what governance levels we need to put on. So let's figure out those governance levels. Let's actually listen to what the citizens or the customers need so that we can actually then figure out what data needs to be shared.
So do you mind if your health data is monetized?
I don't mind if my health data goes all the way to the US and back.
Okay, Jessica?
I like to use the words that the tech envoy likes to use. We live in an era of diminished trust. And my take is we need to understand how we can build back the trust using data. First of all, if I understand where the value of the data that is being that is coming from, me sharing my health data with someone in the hospital and my data moving from one hospital to another, then if the value is clear to me, I'm okay with it moving around. So maybe we need to start asking, how do we start explaining or to Mama Mboga that your data is just your ID number, but this is the value that can come from it. So once that's clear, we can, like you said, we can have our data go to the US and back, and we're okay with it.
Jenna, what is your 001 action that you could recommend Africa to prioritize?
Well, I'll build on what's been said and maybe take Jessica's point one step further. So that explanation on the value is important so that you understand and see it and see if it will be meaningful to you. But one thing we haven't talked about in data sharing is establishing within data sharing agreements mutually beneficial agreements. How to return that value to the citizen or the health seeker in the case of many of the examples. Now, it may be obvious to a person walking into a clinic immediately in that sense that the doctor will know and understand what all their prior history is and be able to provide better care. But that value for ordinary people is not immediately obvious in a lot of other cases. And in fact, there's a lot of extraction where the data travels to the US, but it doesn't come back, or value doesn't come back, right? How do we figure out how to get a mutually beneficial exchange of value when we're sharing data and when we as individuals are consenting to have our data taken? There are lots of great ideas out there. I don't have the brilliant silver bullet, nor do I presume to know for Africa or African countries what that way of doing it is. But I think we need to figure out the world over better mechanisms for engaging ordinary people, not just so that they understand, but so that they see value, financial and otherwise, coming back from the use of their data.
Thank you, Jessica, and that's the time we had. And I just want to echo what Joel said, and it has also been, it also came up here where people are saying that data alone is not the oil. It's not oil. I don't know now, according to you, what is data? But there is a key interest in regards to the people part. I believe we are doing good on data, tech, and processes, but we need to make sure that we are very purposeful in regards to looping in the people. Thank you.
So I think that sums it up. In our panel discussion where we're talking about the topic, Africa is sitting on a gold mine of data. So why isn't Africa rich? So based on the discussion, I'd like to maybe first of all thank moderator, Mr. Savio Wambugu. Thank you very much. That was a very insightful and impactful session. I'd like to thank our panelists, Jenna Slotin, thank you very much. Nyasha Mutsekwa, did I say it right? Thank you very much. Dr. Davis Kimanga, asante sana, and Jessica Wangai, thank you very much for that insightful topic. Now, before you maybe take your seats, and this question, you can either maybe help us answer, or we can also maybe have insight from the audience. Based on the topic, which is why is Africa sitting on a gold mine of data, I happen to be a journalist, and I like storytelling. Can either of you tell us, what is that one success story that shows Africa can actually turn real data into an economic value? Is there a success story? Because, you know, we grow up knowing, oh, when I grow up, I want to be like Mr. Savio. When I grow up, I want to be like so and so. Is there somewhere we can borrow a leaf from? Maybe shed a light?
Well, I think recent events from this past weekend, where Sebastian has run under 2 minutes. He didn't run under 2 minutes because he didn't know that that was the breaking point, right? That was the target. And it's been the target for Kenyan runners for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. When Eliud said he was going to make it, everyone started thinking, oh, wow, people can actually do that? So the data to get there, the work then to actually work out, you know, what do I need to do, what kind of pace I need to hit. Of course, now there's Adidas versus Nike, what kind of shoes to be wearing. All of that data came from the one data point, which was run the marathon under 2. So that's a success point that we can all take.
Oh, impressive. Thank you very much. A round of applause for Mr. Mutsekwa. So maybe we channel the one other question to the audience. Do we have a success story that shows Africa can actually turn data into a real economic value? Because we are saying kusema na kutenda, which is we are discussing and we are actually now going to do it. And it has to come from us who are seated here. Or maybe you'd like to take it? Mr. Davis? You seem like you'd like to say something.
So I think we do have a very good example, and this is related to the work that I currently do, where we are creating a public-private partnership to actually harness digital platform and monetize them for purposes of helping countries. One of the challenges that African countries are having right now are the resources to invest in the digital infrastructure. So that, to me, and Kenya is a shining example of how that has begun, and my hope is that we'll be able to move to more and more countries and get to a point where systems are working, the digital systems are working, and as an extension, we are able to monetize the data that we have across board.
Ah, impressive.
Maybe I can give one that is close to the audience, the lovers of football. Arsenal people, let me not use Arsenal people.
Are there any Arsenal people? By a show of hands? Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I can see, and this is because if you look at the people who love sports, in the last World Cup, data was one of the key components that was enabling most of the teams to be able to win games. They could be able to look and see how Dr. Davis or Jenna, how they are reacting, how they take their free kicks, how they do crosses, how they pass. So, and it has also been adopted in the Kenyan market, whereby you're able to see even our own team, the Harambee Stars, using data. So, sorry to Arsenal people, I don't think they have the technology to do that, but we wish them all the best in the traditional way of winning games.
Okay, thank you very much. And I believe that sums up our panel discussion, which the topic was Africa is sitting on a gold mine of data. Why isn't it rich? Were your questions answered? Over to the audience. Does anybody have a burning question? That one question where you're saying, let me ask it. Yes, we'll take it. Somebody, yes. We have two questions, just two burning ones as we wrap this up. We'll start with the gentleman on my far left over there, and then we'll take it from the gentleman seated here. And then after that, we are just about to break for lunch. Yes, please introduce yourself and then shoot your question.
Okay, thank you. I'm Francis Ivida from State Department for Petroleum. First of all, I would like to thank the panelists for the insightful and valuable discussion that we have actually had. My question is, how can government standardize data formats and APIs to enable interoperability between sectors like healthcare, agriculture, and finance? Secondly, how can startups and young developers gain access to public data infrastructure without compromising the security? And what frameworks support this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Savio, you'll moderate that. And then one more question from here. Then somebody will tell me there's something called gender balance. So in case there's a lady who'd like to ask a question, you can shoot a burning one. However, let's have you. Yes?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Akele. I'm from Adapt IT. Since we are talking about data across sectors, my question is around data, around education, higher education institutions to be in particular. How do we enable cross-border data collaboration in Africa specifically, whereby you've got a student that is studying here in Kenya doing their undergrad degree, and they want to go to a different country, be it South Africa or Namibia, to do their postgrad qualification. Now, the process of validating the qualification that the student would have obtained in their birth country becomes a cumbersome one. How do we then enable that process whereby higher education institutions are able to share the data among themselves so that that process becomes a seamless one and it doesn't frustrate the student? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll have Mr. Savio just have the questions answered.
We can have, if you allow me, we can have Jessica and Jenna answering the data and education from the second question. And then in regards to the integration, the first question on integration in regards to making sure that we have standardized way of integrating into APIs and data. So we give it to Dr. Davis and Nyasha. So we can start with the education one before it over to you.
I don't think there's one single answer, but I suppose that that could be achieved by an agreement between governments that then, ask institutions of higher learning to share the data, or the institutions themselves, if they see value in that, could establish data sharing mechanisms between them. And that may even be the most efficient and effective, since they would understand both what they need and what parameters they would want to set for that data sharing.
Jessica?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just about to echo Gina's words. Yeah, it goes back to the agreement between the two entities. We recently worked on a collaboration framework, especially on research between UK researchers and startup founders and Kenya, which was funded by the British High Commission. And it all went back to what is the shared vision between the two entities first, because I don't think there's need for me to go and study in a nearby country if we don't share the same dream or visions or goals. So that has to be uniform first, and what do we want to achieve? So some sort of a baseline assessment to first understand that, and then have some sort of a checklist on now, what do you want to achieve and how does that look like in the real picture? But yes, I am not an education expert, but that is how we approached it.
Nyasha, you're going to control.
Yeah, I think there's actually infrastructure for that we're not using. All the countries across the continent have a research network. So Kenya has KENET.
Access to data is stored outside of the United States. This for me was scary. It's an act. So, what are our issues? What's the root cause? We don't really have a technology problem, but we have a sovereignty challenge on our hands, and we also have an architecture problem. So what is the government enterprise architecture? Blueprint that aligns how government systems, processes, and infrastructure connect together, integrated as one. So when we talk about processes, we're talking about the standard operating procedures across MDAs. When we talk about data, shared data, is the data trusted across government? Applications, integrated software and service platforms, then of course infrastructure, secure and sovereign cloud. Remember I showed you the US Cloud Act. So it means that the US Cloud Act, for example, was really focusing about cloud service applications, not infrastructure, not data center, not where the data center is located. So when we look at all in, it becomes really scary. But let's look at, again, interoperability. So architecture is the foundation. We need to understand the architecture. Interoperability is how it comes alive in 4 layers. Technical, data, process, and institution. So for technical, we're talking about connectivity and standards. Your APIs, the data formats. I'm going to try not to be too technical, so forgive me. But because of interoperability, I kind of don't have a choice. Master data governance and quality standards. And then process, this is about the aligned workflows across the MDAs, as the ministries, departments, and agencies. And then institutional, the policies, the governance, and the collaboration. The legal frameworks, the interagency collaboration and agreements, the coordinated bodies. So, just very quickly, there are 3 models that I would like to look at and talk about lessons learned from Africa and the world. Kenya, by the way, is doing excellently well. But the 3 models I want to talk about is Kenya, Nigeria, and Estonia. So Kenya is known for the single portal, integrated payments, with thousands of services online. Nigeria coordination around the workflow automation and stuff like that. But Estonia is almost known as the gold standard when it comes to digital public infrastructure. So we'll look just a bit about those. But combining the 3 is where we win. One integrated sovereign platform that delivers access, coordination, and architecture. Sorry. So Kenya, what we all know, e-citizens. Kenya's e-citizens platform in Africa is Africa's most recognized government digital access success story. I don't think there's anyone who does it better than Kenya when it comes to e-citizens. They started with citizens first experience. So the strengths, single unified portal, integrated payments, thousands of services, over 22,000 services already digitized, convenient and accessible. That is true. But then there's a bit of a challenge on the back end, limited deep systems integration, centralized risk, identity and UX friction, resilience and redundancy. So Kenya, from our studies, Kenya is very strong on the front end, back end is still evolving. And I take one